Good morning, people. I think I have a guest request. It's lagging. Let me try again. April Henry, Jesus is a fictional character in a story. He's not king of anything. He's not lord of anything. Nobody's going to bow to a fictional character in a story.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it going? What's the topic?
the Bible is not true.
Oh, I mean, I agree with that. I'm a Hindu. I don't know if you know anything about Hinduism.
I don't know. I don't know much. I believe that Hindus believe the greatest thing that could possibly happen is to be reincarnated as a cow.
I don't know if it says that specifically, but
I
it's
think that's the general uh, consensus, though.
oh, I don't think so.
So you tell me then, as a Hindu, were you raised as a Hindu?
Yeah,
Or what country are you in?
the U.S.
So your parents were Hindu.
Yeah,
How old are you?
I'm 24.
And you think Hinduism is correct, or is it just a lifestyle and culture that you live?
It is correct. It's science. It's not referred to as a religion. It's just objective truth.
So give me something that you think is objective truth from a Hindu perspective.
So the universe is eternal, and that's what
Well,
Hindus
so
believe.
hang on a second. I agree with you on that, but I don't think that's I don't think that we can say that that is objectively true. That is a philosophical,
It isn't.
opinion.
It's not a philosophical opinion. There's a simple way of expressing it. It's the statement that something cannot come from nothing. So the logical statement of that is that if something were to
Well,
be inside of nothing, that term nothing would no longer be true in that statement.
so
So
I agree with you. I believe the universe is eternal also, but I don't believe that you can say it is objective truth. You can say that this is the best logical statement that we could make because we have laws of science, the law of conservation of matter and the law of conservation of energy, and we observe these things to be true 100% of the time. Therefore, the most logical, supported scientific statement is that the universe has always existed. So it's still a logical argument. It's not objective truth. I mean, I agree with you, except that you're saying that it's objective truth. Because objective truth is something that we all know is true and can prove is true. For example, you and I are speaking to each other. That is objective truth. I mean, nobody, you have to be completely insane to disagree that you and I are speaking to each other. But saying the universe is eternal is the most well supported scientific statement that we could make, but it's not necessarily objective truth
how is it not?
because you can't prove it.
But I just did.
No, you didn't. So, so
But
it's
like,
possible
no,
that
you're declining what I'm saying without
I'm
like,
saying you cannot prove that the universe is eternal.
no, you're not understanding what I'm saying, which is where I'm having conflict with you.
Okay, well, what are you saying?
So like maybe I'll reiterate it so that it like really like you can emotionally like come to terms with how it or what it means.
It's not about emotions. It's about speaking clearly and factually.
Sure. Something can't come from nothing, right? That's just one logical statement. Something cannot
And it's
be
a supported.
inside of nothing.
What was
right?
that? Second.
So, do we know what nothing means?
I guess we could talk about that all day, but we can generally say, yeah, we know what nothing means.
Okay. So if something were to be a nothing, would that be nothing, or would it be something at that point?
So something is something, and something cannot be nothing.
No, that's not what I said.
I didn't say that's what you said. I was making my statement to clarify something and nothing.
Okay. So something cannot be inside of nothing, correct?
Something and nothing are mutually exclusive.
That's not the point that I'm making. I need you to like
Well,
go
so the point you're
because
making doesn't make any sense. So you're saying something cannot be inside of nothing. I guess for the sake of moving forward, I agree with you. Something cannot be inside of nothing because
okay.
nothing and something are mutually exclusive. You cannot have something and nothing at the same time. It's either something or nothing, and I mean, nothing is nothing.
Yes. So if something can't be from nothing, that means whatever something was didn't come from anywhere. It has always been there. So it can't be created because it can't come from nowhere. So
So,
in regards to the universe, right? The universe is eternal in the fact that it wasn't created out of nothing because something would have been inside of that nothing for it to be created. So the grandfather argument that people try to believe in or try to understand isn't true. It's disproven in that fact. And just because it has a terminology or like a special phrasing doesn't mean that it has any point to of contention because it's termed grandfather argument. It's just a weak argument with a special terminology for it. So don't take its side because it's referred to that way, because a lot of people think that way.
so you said a bunch of stuff that I didn't understand, but I believe uh, that it is a well supported statement based on everything that we know. And so the possibility that there's something that we don't know is what prevents me from concluding that it is objective truth that the universe has always existed. So I agree. I believe the best argument is that the universe has always existed, and it just changes forms and matter and states, and matter just and energy just changes forms. It does not come into existence or leave existence. It just change. When you burn a book, well, you don't see the book anymore, but the book just changed form into smoke and ash
Yeah,
and
yeah,
vapor.
and that's true, right? But that qualifies for an objective truth. So,
I don't know if it does or not. So let's
so like
move
your
on to the next point.
okay, so your point of contention is with like religion, but I'm also like I don't believe in authoritative religions. Hinduism is considered a science, so I just refer to everything as scientific understanding of everything.
But
Like,
do you believe in reincarnation?
yeah.
In what form? So what do you think reincarnation is?
So it's the fact that your conscious actions, right? When you die, like all the energy in the universe, it has a point of like algorithmically functioning in a proper way, in a like a mathematical objective way where there's no like randomness to it. And your consciousness being a part of connected to the whole universe because you are the universe, that you can will yourself to controlling the universe in contention with someone else that's also willing it. And there's only such an extent you can take it where I can change the world with you not being able to stop me from doing so.
So I don't understand what you're talking about. Willing to change the world.
So
So
the
you
fact
can
that
make a decision and you can try to, be an activist for something, and you can pick it and you can, gather a group of followers that listen to you and agree with you, and you can make change. But it sounds like you're talking about some supernatural uh,
No,
effect.
it's like you can consider it algorithmically in that fact.
I don't know what you mean by that.
As in, like, I can do all these things, like I can do a lot of good things, and good things will happen to me karmically,
So
right?
that's not. I know that's not true. So I have been a good person all my life, and bad things have been continually happening to me all throughout my life. So good things do not happen to good people.
No, so
And
what people think that they do good, they are ignorant because they think that the good that they do is enough or is sufficient from whatever worldview that they've interpreted to be their belief. There is a limitless understanding of what you can do that is actually good continuously, forever. So when people say that they do good, they may not even realize that they're not doing more good than they should be because they're conforming to social practice, to social standards, or just what other people do for the majority
so,
in
so
our
hold up,
secular
hold up.
country.
So if I am, going to school to get a career and a degree, and so that I can support a wife and children, so that I can help them live happy, healthy lives, to sort through all the chaos of the world, and to provide a safe environment for my family to live in. And so, if this to you is not good enough, you say it should. You said something like you're delusional because you don't understand that the good that you think you're doing is not the good that you should be doing, or something like that. So
Yeah,
who is it that is deciding what good I should do?
it's not about deciding, it's about the truth of the matter of how the world exists, right? Because we're in a discussion on TikTok Live arguing about religion and God and whatnot. You could be doing something else where you could be doing good. You could be doing, community service, or you could be pursuing more knowledge. You could be figuring out how to do more and
So
do
I
more
believe
work.
what I'm doing right now is good because I'm trying to, help other people with the information that I have learned. And so when I'm trying to help other people sort out,
And
you
yet,
know, the
there are
chaos of this
problems
world
you
and the
face
lies.
in the world, right?
Huh?
So, in the fact that there are problems you still face in the world that you're saying. So, if you don't find that the connection with you helping people on the internet understand like intellectual truths about the world, then you need to find a way to, you know, do other services to serve yourself and pursue that, because there's no reason that whatever you do, as long as you keep pursuing it, that bad things should happen to you unless you limit yourself. If you sit around the couch a couple of hours a day doing nothing, that also that also counts. You can't be ignorant of that. If I go out drinking like on the weekends, that counts. If I'm watching TV and doing nothing, that counts. There's always a
Counts as
time and place.
what? You're saying bringing negative things into your life because you're not actively doing something
Yeah,
productive or useful every second
exactly.
of your life.
Yeah.
Whenever you're wasting, listen,
No, I'm
what I
agreeing.
think you're saying is whenever you waste a moment of your life, whether it's just to relax or while you're sleeping, you're not doing anything actively good while you're sleeping. Therefore, the reason bad things are happening to me is because I'm not actively doing good things 24 hours a day because I'm actually sleeping several hours a day.
No, sleeping doesn't pertain to that. Sleeping is like a
Oh, so
biological
sleeping don't
necessity.
count. So it's only when you're awake that, and so let's say you have a bad night's sleep and that you don't feel good the next day, and so you're not highly productive the next day because you had a bad night's sleep. So what is it that caused the bad night's sleep? You say, well, maybe you drink caffeine or maybe you're stressed out.
Yeah.
So
So like
so
if I do drugs all the time, right? Then I
okay,
can't
so
sustain my self-health in a
so
healthy
listen,
manner
stop,
if
listen.
I eat all the
We
time. No, I'm
we can
disproving you
all
and you're telling me to
stop,
stop. You need to understand that I'm
stop.
disproving you. So
No,
when you feel
okay. Listen, I'm not going to fight with you for a conversation. When I interrupt you, it's because you said something that did not make sense. It's not because you proved me wrong. It's because I want you to stop because you said something that either I did not understand or that I disagree with. Do you understand that? So we're done.
I sent you a request to unmute. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Patrina.
Yeah, you have up there an intelligent conversation only. I don't think that was very intelligent.
Well, I mean, I think it was. I think it was, but when he wanted to claim that just because I wanted to interject and talk about something that he said, it's because he disproved me. That it lost intelligence at that point. So
Yeah,
if
I
I
agree.
interrupt you, it's because you said something that I want to address. And if you want to keep speaking when you've already lost me, you see, if someone says, I don't understand what you just said, or I disagree with what you just said, to continue speaking when we have a point of contention is to be completely, to disregard the conversation that we're having. If you're having a conversation with somebody and the other person is not understanding what you're saying or disagrees, then there is no point in continuing to talk about something if you've already lost them because they don't understand or don't agree. What's up, TJ?
Hey, good morning. How you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Did you hear me say good when you said how are you doing and I said good? Did you hear that?
I just saw the bad bars come up. I'm actually atheist. Just wanted to ask you a question. If not, I'll drop down.
No, that's fine. I mean, I don't have any requirements except that it be an intelligent, respectful conversation.
I just wanted to hear. You're a new person I've seen on you. I just wanted to know what your what your response would be to the tag argument that a lot of Christians are using to shut down people who are trying to just just have conversations with atheists like me or other people who believe different religions.
So what's your question?
How would you respond to the tag argument that Christians have been using a lot lately? Like, I don't know if you've met a couple on here. There's some big names like Presup or
So
I've been shut
give
down
me the argument. So give me the argument, and then I'll respond to it.
that you can't have intelligence or knowledge without a God creator to have created it. I'm probably butchering the definition of it, but
Right. So when they they make the claim that morality has to come from God, logic has to come from God, reason has to come from God. That's the argument, right?
yeah, you
So
can't have knowledge without God.
so I don't even understand. This is a baseless assertion. So to say that God is necessary for knowledge, then I would say, why is it that we have to go to school? Why do we send our children to school? Why do parents have to teach their children not to jump off a cliff? Because God did not implant knowledge into children. Children have to learn things from their parents and from school. Why do we have books? We have to read books because humans have to impart knowledge to other humans. God does not give knowledge to anybody. I mean, you can go to an island of Aborigines or something who have never read a book. They don't know how to read and write, and you can compare the knowledge that they have to the knowledge that someone in a civilized country has, and it's drastically different. So this would be proof that God does not give humans knowledge, but knowledge is gained through from humans. Intelligent humans teach ignorant humans, and then the ignorant humans become knowledgeable. So knowledge does not come from God; it comes from humans, and we can know that knowledge is directly related to a person's brain. So we can even measure the ability, the knowledge of people by giving them tests, asking them questions. An IQ test is just about, observing things and figuring out, which one is different or something. And this is not something that it's not universal for all people. It's different for all people. That makes it subjective, which is also proof that God is not the one who is giving humans knowledge, because if that's the case, then he would be giving different people different amounts of knowledge or different capacities for knowledge. So I don't even understand the claim that knowledge comes from God, because we read books, we go to school, we are taught we teach our children by our parents that each person has a different amount of capacity for knowledge, and however many books or how many ways that you've applied yourself to learn. To me, it's completely. I wish that somebody could make sense of the argument, because it makes absolutely zero sense at all. It is a baseless claim that says we can't know anything unless God exists, and I'm like, that makes no sense.
Yeah, 'cause most people wouldn't even know God exists if the information wasn't passed down by people.
So does their argument make sense to you? Because I don't even understand.
You said it beautifully to a certain degree. I just wanted to get your take, see if there's any different way to explain it. I've always explained it is that knowledge isn't given, it's obtained. And we've obtained it through experience, we've obtained it through generations, we've obtained it through war, through anguish, through tears, through blood. We gain knowledge that way, and that's how we are where we are today, So, I mean, it's never made sense to me either. I just wanted to see a different perspective on it.
So I believe all they're doing is it's the same thing as like prayer. If somebody prays, if they're unemployed and they're praying that God gives them a job, but yet they're actively filling out applications and sending in their resumes and looking for jobs and going to interviews, and then they say, "Oh, God gave me this job." Like, no, God did not give you that job. You applied to that job. You went to the interview. You gained certain skills and knowledge that you could even put on a resume that is applicable to the job that you applied to. So these people that are believing in God are just attributing things to God that they actually did themselves. So, you can give anybody credit for things, but proving that thing is actually the reason that this happened is completely unfounded.
The response I've gotten is also that God gave us the capacity for knowledge. So in other words, like an instinctual, I would always say it's an instinctual thing where our brain has developed to a certain size where we can, recognize patterns and we can see certain things. And you watch an animal eat a certain thing, it goes and unalives, it's, probably not good to eat that. And you pass that knowledge on to your kids so they don't eat that and unalive. To me, it's always been, as we got more knowledgeable about things. So
right. So I was thinking, I said this the other day because I actually caught myself in a mistake, because I'm like, I would say, well, a lion seems to instinctually know that antelope is its favorite thing to eat. Why don't antelope eat hyenas or something like this? And I'm like, well, that's not instinctive. They learn it from their parents. Their parents, they will, what is it? Is it wildebeest or water buffalo and antelope? These are their favorite prey of lion, not because they instinctively know that that's their favorite thing to eat. It's because that's what their parents taught them to hunt. And when they go after something else, like even a black mamba or something, if there's a snake crawling through the savannah, lions don't attack snakes. They don't like snakes, because it's not because God put this desire or fear of snakes in lions. It's because their parents did not train them on how to successfully hunt snakes. Their parents trained them how to hunt antelope and water buffalo or wildebeest or whatever, and say we've got a high success rate when we go after these, and we don't get injured. Now, if you go after a hyena or a pack of dogs, then they kind of fight back and they become a nuisance to lions, and they're like, you guys are just too much trouble. I would rather go after an antelope. They don't fight back. We get excited because of the chase, and so it's not instinctive. The knowledge did not come from God. It came from their parents.
Yeah, but some knowledge is. I had the argument that some knowledge is instinctual, because like a spider isn't taught how to make a web; they just know how to make a web. You're not taught to breathe when you come out, you just breathe. You know, it's there are some things that are inherent that you are just instinctually born with. So they're trying to attribute that to as that's what God's given you. It's giving you that capacity to learn, even though the learning takes place over the amount of years you live, where you experience things
Well,
and you see and witness things and all that kind
so
of stuff.
so you
So how
mentioned
would
two
you
different things.
compete against that?
So instinctive or involuntary things are completely different than uh, capacity to learn. So that's two different things. So if we just talk about the capacity for knowledge or the capacity to learn, then each individual person has a different capacity. Now, so this is, I mean, we study it. It's just like taking an IQ test. Some people are smarter than others. It's because their brain is more capable of processing information. Sometimes it could be DRUGS. It could be genetic mutations. It could be a bunch of different reasons. Maybe the mom smoked cigarettes or something while she was pregnant, and it stunted the growth and development of the brain as a fetus or something. But so though the capacity to learn is a physically measurable, completely subjective thing based on each individual person's personal. So God did not give the capacity to learn, because we can measure that doing DRUGS or smoking during pregnancy affects the capacity to learn. And now, if you talk about the instinctive or involuntary actions, I mean, so then you're just boiling it down to say, well, the only thing God does is help you breathe, because you're doing this involuntarily. You didn't learn how to breathe. You just did it as an involuntary action. God is the one that's making your heart beat. But yet we know that if you don't eat properly, it will affect your heart. And we know that some people are born with heart defects for various reasons. And so then you would say, well, God created this little child with a heart murmur, and for no apparent reason. And I mean, it just makes no sense that you want to attribute. So we know knowledge is learned. We're not born with knowledge. You have to read books and go to school for knowledge. The capacity for knowledge is also completely subjective, and it is based on physical impacts to the brain, like smoking during pregnancy, for example. So that's not something that you can attribute to God. And so the only thing we're down to is the involuntary actions of your heartbeat and your breath, and say, well, maybe God makes these involuntary things, but yet you can attribute that to evolution and survival as well. So if that's the only thing God can do is make your heart beat, but yet he makes some people's hearts stop beating. And you say, well, why did God do that?
True. It's a good question. Yeah. Well, thanks for your perspective. I'm having really bad connection. It's cutting out on me little by little. So
All right.
I do
Thanks for
appreciate
stopping
the
in,
answer.
people.
I was just trying to see a different perspective. That's pretty much what I gave. That's what I gave him pretty much. So, all right, man. Cheers.
I
I'll listen
sent you
in the
a follow,
background.
TJ. Thanks for
Great.
coming up in the guest box.
Thanks, TJ. All right. What we got? Are you letting them in, Patrina?
Yeah, I know who was next.
All right.
Somebody that
Electric
grew up Amish in the chat. I was trying to invite them up. That would be a deep conversation. Electric.
Yeah, he's got to go.
Electric.
He's got to go. Just let him go.
Oh, 1 second. Sorry.
Okay, what's up?
Yo, I'm sorry. I just didn't know you invited me because I've been waiting for like a minute. But can you give me like 30 seconds to get ready to talk to you?
I guess, sure.
Well,
Thank you so much.
let's drop you down, and then when you're
Okay,
ready, you can come back up.
Yeah.
I'll bring you back up.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Well, is it afternoon where you are? It's morning
Yeah,
here.
it is. Yes, it's about 3:30 in the afternoon.
Where are you?
I'm in sunny Spain. How are we doing?
Spain. Okay, I'm good. I'm in America.
Yeah. I had kind of guessed. What time is it there?
8:30 in the morning.
Oh well, good morning then.
Good
Okay.
morning.
So listen, if you're after an opposition, I'm not your man. So I just wanted to come up and say it's nice to find reasonable, rational conversation on this on TikTok.
Well, I've learned that even from my lives and from other people's lives, when you only invite opposition, you get complete ridiculous nonsense that is a waste of time, and people are irrational, and it gets on my nerves. So
It can get very tiring, can't it?
yeah, and in fact, it's made me want to quit going live because when you say something like the Bible is not true, and they say, "How do you know that?" I said, "Well, the Bible says whoever believes in Jesus can heal the sick, so I know it's not true." And then they want to start making justifications and lies and excuses to justify something that we know is not true. It's just extremely frustrating to me.
I can imagine. So how do you deal with it?
Well, one way I deal with it is by saying I'm only going to have intelligent conversations with people and not say that I only want opposition, because that's what brings out completely irrational conversations that is just a waste of time. See, a lot of people like these, arguments because some people, I guess, are entertained by these completely fruitless waste of time arguments. I'm not here to waste my time. I've got other things that I can do. I want to teach the truth, and I want to teach people how they can know what the truth is. And I'm not going to just waste my time beating my head against a wall with someone that is an irrational person.
But isn't belief in, and again, I might be triggering some people down here, but isn't believing in this, isn't it essentially irrational?
Believing in God is irrational, yes. Yeah. And so I just duetted a video that I guess I forget his name, but he was like the president of Atheist International or something, who makes the statement that the sum total of all evidence supporting anything supernatural whatsoever, any God or any supernatural thing, whether it be telepathy or whatever, is zero. We have absolutely zero valid scientific evidence for anything supernatural. And so when you want to believe somebody resurrected from the dead 2,000 years ago, or that he walked around healing the sick or raising the dead or casting out demons, you can't even prove that demons exist. But yet you're believing that somebody 2,000 years ago cast demons out of people just because you read it in a book. I mean, this is completely irrational.
I think there's an interesting, I think they know that. Because when they come on these places and they say, well, prove it, and they deliberately misuse understanding of words like theory and hypothesis and evidence and all these kind of stuff.
Right.
And then if you do go with the scientific method and generally say, even they know that the scientific method always allows for a certain amount of doubt, because that's the rational thing to do.
Huh.
It accepts that it's never 100% clear cut, that there will always be a possibility that you can falsify.
You might find more evidence later that changes it.
Yeah, absolutely. We might find evidence that there is this sky fairy. We haven't done yet, but they know that. And when it becomes clear, when you discuss these things with people, and it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer that that we're basically saying, look, there is no evidence yet. There might be, but we don't think that there will be. They will then play the card of, well, proof denies faith, or our sky fairy exists outside time and space. Therefore, anything you can do, and they know. I think they know this. I mean, I put in the comments. I think religions are basically, seem to me, like a multi-level marketing scheme.
Well,
You've got to continue to sustain what you're doing. Otherwise, if people don't keep buying into this nonsense, then it will just basically disappear.
I believe it is going to disappear at some point in our future. I wish it would be during my lifetime because I would like to see it, but it probably won't be during my lifetime. But when you say you think they know that, I guess I would disagree with you because I was a Christian. I believed in God not very long ago. I still believed in God just
Same
a few
here.
years ago.
Same here.
And so I don't think they know that God is not real, that he's just an imaginary character in a story. They don't know that. They think he's really real. And they don't know. And when they say you can't prove he's not real, they don't understand that what they just said is illogical and irrational because they don't understand that disproving the negative is not a valid argument. They say as long as you can't prove that he's not real, that means my belief in him is rational. It does not mean that. So the fact that you are believing in something that has absolutely no evidence for it, except that other people believe it, that's the only evidence. But yet it actually does have evidence against it. So when you say that whoever believes in Jesus can heal the sick, we have absolute, tons and tons of evidence that this does not happen. So that's proof that the Bible is not true and that there's no power in the name of Jesus. But they completely ignore the evidence against it. And then they suppose that you can't disprove them, but yet we just did. They're disregarding the proof against them and holding on to this irrational concept.
I don't know. Maybe they. I don't know. I think you're right. Most people who believe these things probably don't. But I just can't help but wonder if the people at the highest level, we're not talking about stupid people. We're not talking about people who are undereducated.
So let's talk about the Pope. So the Pope is in the process of croaking right now.
Is he? I don't know.
Yeah, he's 80-something years old. He's got double pneumonia. He's even said, "I don't think I'm going to."
Did you see where he had a dream that demons were at the foot of his bed? He had a dream that a whole bunch of demons was in this tunnel at the foot of his bed, and he was screaming, "Get him away from me!"
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds like something. That's hard to believe, Patricia, because I don't think he would want that information, even if it did happen. Even if it did happen, I don't think he would tell that story because that would go against the Catholic Church, and he's the number one marketer for the Catholic Church.
I could swear that was on the news. I could swear. I may have seen it somewhere else, Jeff, but I swear.
But I would be suspicious that would be somebody else, maybe even an atheist, who's putting out this rumor that the Pope is having visions of demons.
Maybe I'll have to look that up.
So because it defeats the purpose. The reason the Pope exists is to promote the Catholic Church. He's a marketer, and so the only thing you can do to justify your death is to say that, oh, God is calling me home. God has told me I've done a good job, and now He's going to bring me home. But when I've been seeing these videos on TikTok, I'm saying, hey, why don't you just heal yourself in the name of Jesus? But He sure can't do that. If they could cast out demons, you could think they could cast out pneumonia as well, but they can't.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't know. I mean, I think as I said, you said about the Pope's main job is to sell Catholicism.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good point. Because in order for it to exist, you have to continue to sell it and sell people on this idea that, you can buy yourself fire insurance for the hereafter.
But there was some story. Now, I don't know if this is propaganda either, but I've heard some story about some Pope in the past, in the Middle Ages somewhere, who said something like this myth of God has been highly productive or something like that, highly successful. Now, I don't know if it's a true story or not, but I do believe that the Pope, the active Pope that we have right now that's in the process of dying,
Francis.
I don't believe he believes in God. I believe he's an atheist. I believe he's just a promoter of the Catholic Church. And because to even take the position that you are the vicar of Christ, and you know everything that you've done in your life. You know that if you've ever done anything evil in the Catholic Church, it's highly likely.
He was a bit of a supporter of a militaristic dictatorship in his home country. That's a little bit of a naughty thing to be doing.
What is his own country?
He's from Argentina.
Argentina.
He's Argentinian, and I believe, although when he was first elected, there was claims that he'd somehow been sort of a liberation theologian, but actually no, he I believe he was quite close to one of the military dictatorships in Argentina in the 1970s, 1980s.
Well, so I remember when this guy, is it Benedict? Is that his name?
No, he's the one. He was the Nazi. Schmarzi. Sorry. No, he was the one who'd been in the Hitler Youth. He was German. No, the one at the moment, he retired. First time a Pope's ever actually taken retirement.
Well, what's the current guy's name?
Current guy's name is Francis the First. And I believe he's Argentinian.
Right. So I remember when Pope John Paul, because I think Pope John Paul was the Pope when I was born, and I think he was the Pope for like 20 years or something.
Mind me asking when you were born?
On 76.
Yeah, it would be John Paul. No, John Paul wasn't when you were born. I think he came along slightly later.
Well, he's the first Pope that I ever knew of. So I don't.
Polish Pope, Karol Wojtyła.
So John Paul was the first Pope that I ever remember. And he was a Pope for a long time in my life. And when he died, I remember, even though I was not Catholic, to me, the Pope was Pope John Paul. And every single Pope that has been appointed after John Paul, to me, has seemed like a fake guy. Now, because I guess the first guy I ever heard of was John Paul, and so I thought he was the real Pope. And then, the fact that these popes are just dying, and then we get another Pope, and then they die, or we get another Pope, and then he retires, and we get another Pope. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is clearly a political position. But when I was a kid, when I heard of John Paul, I thought that guy was supposed to be something special. And turns out he's not. He's just a regular guy who dies just like anybody else.
I mean, I don't know, he was quite, I don't know, they would probably say controversial. Mind you, they all have been.
You mean John Paul?
Yeah.
I need to. So somebody look up, Patrina, can you look up when Pope John Paul was the Pope? Because I'm curious now.
He was the Pope. I think he would have been late 70s. He was certainly the Pope by about 1980, I think. Because there was one who was chosen and then he passed on very, very quickly. And there's all sorts of conspiracy theories around what happened there.
It says Pope John Paul II. Is that it?
Yeah.
Served as Pope from 1978 until his death in 2005.
Wow, 2005. So no wonder I thought he was the real Pope. So
there's only been 3 in your lifetime. 4.
Yeah.
If you were born in 76. I think there were 2. There was one who'd been around for a while. I can't remember. I think it was Paul. There was a John and a Paul, which is why John Paul II chose the name that he did, because it was to the 2 previous ones. One of them had been around a while, and then he passed away, and then there was one who was only in for a couple of months, and then Karol Wojtyła, who was he was the first non-Italian Pope for quite a long time, and then they chose John Paul, and John Paul, like you've just said, was there for
Patrina, now I'm curious about the successions of popes after John Paul. So John Paul was Pope from 78 to 2005. So that's 22 plus 5 is 27 years.
There's only been 2 since. The one now and Benedict.
Really? So Benedict and Francis?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I thought there was more than that.
So I looked up how many popes since 2005, and it shows the Roman Catholic popes of the past 135 years. You had Pope Francis, March 13, 2013, Benedict, I don't know what number that is. I'm not good with Greek numbers. April to 2005, February 28 to 2013, John Paul II, October 16, 1978 to April 2005.
So we had Benedict from 2005 to 2013, which is what? That's only 8 years.
He retired because he was already very old when he came to power, and they said he was sort of an interim. And he's, like I said, he's the first pope to abdicate or to retire in about 500 years.
Yes.
And he was
So
the
you had
one.
John Paul II, then Benedict, and then Pope Francis.
And so Francis has been in there since 13. So that's 11 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so?
2013.
Oh, it's amazing how, I'm actually getting old because now I can say 11 years seems like 2 years. Like,
Yeah, right. Feel you there.
Been Pope for 11 years, but it seems like just 2 or 3 to me.
He seems quite new. Mind you, we all went into a bit of a time warp during lockdown, I guess.
We did what?
We went into a bit of a time warp during lockdown, I suppose. It's all kind of like a lost year or two that when we were all inside in our own apartments and stuff. So I think that's
I do agree. It had a significant impact. In fact, I hear of so many people that left the church because I actually left the church around 2020 as well. So it was during this COVID process that had such a huge impact on me and other people. When the government was telling churches that they cannot meet and that the churches had to obey the government, you're like, well, where's God in this thing? Like, what? We can't just do whatever we want and let our God, pray to our God.
I thought the same thing. Yeah.
To keep us from getting sick or to keep us from getting arrested if we're disobeying the government or something. Like, no, the churches had to comply with the government demands. It's like, well, and then in America we had a huge election snafu that was highly impactful, and so it was my grandparents also died at the same time in 2020 and 2021. My maternal grandparents both died, and that had a big impact on me too.
Sorry,
my dad's same time.
Your dad died.
Sorry.
He passed away just after COVID, not because of COVID, but he'd been ill for a while and he passed away.
I don't think my grandparents died because of COVID either. So, but they died.
I think we need to watch saying the C word.
Yeah, that's why I keep saying passed away.
Yeah. So
we're not allowed to say the C word.
Probably not. I mean, it's a highly political.
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah, it's hot. Yeah, it's a trigger word for TikTok.
Because I've been avoiding the D word.
Well, I think the most dangerous word there is KILL and maybe MURDER, but I don't think dead or die is.
I've heard it is. I've heard it unalived or passed away is more less
it's
likely.
Definitely safer. It's safer to use those words. Anything else, Bob? I got a few more people in the box.
Right, I'm going to drop out. It's lovely talking to you, and I think we need to keep having rational conversations because there's an awful lot of crazies out there, and you take care.
Nice meeting you, Bob. I sent you a follow.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, we got the Amish person waiting.
Well, let
that I
Electric Being
invited.
back in. Let Electric Being back in
Okay.
because he wanted to talk and we had to drop him.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, Electric.
Thank you for before. Yeah, how you been?
Good.
So I'm a gnostic, mystical Christian. That's what I see myself as. Gnostic means I seek knowledge about the universe and how everything became to be. My question to you guys is, how would you define God as non-believers?
Fake.
No, how would you define what is God? What does it mean?
So God is an imaginary character that humans created to answer questions that they don't know the answers to.
Amazing. So the quote is like, God is a human invention, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually not true. God is the eternal foundation of our existence. It's not an external deity in the sky. It's the living force that sustains all things.
So that's a baseless assertion that there is a living force that sustains all things.
It's called God for thousands of
So
years.
that's and you're proving my point that God is an imaginary concept that humans created to answer questions that they don't know the answers to. You're demonstrating what I said is true.
Yeah. But if we see our consciousness and how we perceive reality, we see that internally we have the power to change our perception of reality and to manifest things into the physical. That means that our
You can't
consciousness
manifest things in physical. No, you can't.
So if you want to have a child in the future, you have that idea, but that idea is invisible. It's not physical. And if you decide to have a child, that child is going to be a living person who changes the
Really?
world.
Really? Can you go tell my son and his wife that? Because they're trying to have a child right now. They've been trying to manifest it for 7 years. And
No, I mean, when you're
and
capable of having a
the one
child.
that they just manifested, they lost. So
I'm sorry to hear that. I
Really?
mean, I have similar.
Katrina, whoa, a second. Katrina, so they just lost a baby?
yeah, they went in to do the IVF, and right before they did the IVF, she found out she was pregnant, and then a week or two later, she lost it.
I didn't know that. I heard that they got pregnant, I believe, but I didn't hear they lost it.
Yeah. So that manifestation is wrong.
So my mother also had like 6 abortions, just like you say. It's a tough thing, but my example was if you're capable of having a child, just like when you
It's
create
not
an
an
art
abortion.
Okay, let's say I want to create a project, an art project or a building. That's an invisible idea. You can manifest that using your conscious mind, which perceives reality differently for everyone.
No. Stop. You don't manifest a building with your mind. You manifest it with hard labor and construction. Now,
I'm
the
saying-
mind,
Yeah,
you have to use the mind to do that, but you don't manifest it with the mind. You create it with your hands and the mind behind the hands.
It's you create it, but externally it looks like a manifestation because from an invisible idea you go to change in the physical world. So that's you create your own reality. Yeah.
Manifesting implies some supernatural thing.
No,
And-
that's just your worldview. You don't know the word. You cannot define manifest. That's why.
Okay, so then if you would use words that make sense, you would say we can design a building and then use labor to construct a building with our minds. I'd say sure, that is absolutely true. We can put our minds to a project and we can put our hands to the task and we can build a building. But to say that we manifest it with our mind is misleading.
Yeah.
But
So-
God is a manifestation of the mind. So God is purely created from the minds of people just to answer. It's called the God of the gap. So whenever you don't know the answer to a question and you're not willing to research and put in the effort to look at the evidence, you just insert God and say, well, hey, I don't have to study. I'll just have to believe in God and say God did it. But yet there's actually things that we should and could study to learn the truth, but that requires effort, and most people aren't willing to put in the effort. So they just believe.
You're right, but belief is the enemy of knowing. You can believe anything. You can believe I'm a penguin, but that doesn't change the truth, and you have to have knowledge to understand the truth and the facts. So we're talking about knowledge of God, not belief of God. That's nothing.
And but there is no knowledge of God because nobody can. There's not even a data point that you can study on the existence of God. There's no data whatsoever. So you can have no knowledge of God. You can only
No
have
data,
faith
exactly.
in God.
Yeah. You know that why there's no data? Because science only addresses the physical, external observations. It doesn't address the origins of will, consciousness, and love, and the other things which are not visible to the human eye, because we see only 0.0% of the of the light spectrum. So that means that there's so much invisible that we cannot see and perceive.
So if God did things like the Bible says, like he could send fire from heaven to burn up an altar when you call on him, like he did in 1 Kings chapter 18 for Elijah and the prophets of Baal, or in Mark chapter 16 when Jesus says, these signs will follow those who believe. They will cast out demons. They will speak in tongues. They will drink deadly poison and handle venomous snakes, and nothing will harm them, and they can lay their hands on the sick and heal them. Then science would say that whenever you pray in the name of Jesus, you can be healed of epilepsy or paralysis or amputees or whatever. So science just studies what happens in nature. And
The physical yeah.
So if the Bible were true, and if the God of the Bible were true, then science would say that that it is observably true that whenever people believe in Jesus, they have the ability to heal the sick. That's not observably true. In fact, it's observably false. Therefore, we know that the Bible and the God of the Bible is just a figment of human imagination.
But you take the words of the Bible as physical, actual, historical events, which is not true. That's deception. Jesus said to the crowd, he speaks in parables. He said, guys, I speak in parables always. That means that everything is a metaphor.
How do you
for
know
the
what
human-
Jesus said? How do you know what he said?
That's a verse in the Bible. He says to the crowd. I'm just referring to the Bible in verse.
Yeah,
8,
that's not an eyewitness account, though. So we don't know Jesus for sure said that. That's just hearsay.
That's a verse. I mean,
Right. So
Yeah.
she's making a really valid point, though. So not only do we not have the words of Jesus, we have not even written in the language that Jesus would have spoken. We don't have eyewitness testimonies of Jesus at all, the Bible or outside the Bible. We have no eyewitness testimonies to the existence of Jesus. And we don't even have attributions to what Jesus said in the language that he would have spoken, which would have been Aramaic. So when you say Jesus said something, this is a purely baseless hearsay claim with no evidence. You've got to understand that. We don't know. So I don't believe Jesus even existed. So to say that we know what Jesus said or what he meant, or he was speaking in parables, or he was talking about Kundalini awakening is pure baseless speculation.
whether Jesus existed or not, honestly, I don't care. And you said he doesn't. That's not the point. The point is the lesson that is taught about the human body and the evolution of the soul and the mind. Because the mind is evolution every year. There's evolution of the mind. The consciousness perceives reality differently throughout the ages. That means that different people have different. They can interpret different things from the Bible and take it as literal. But that's only deception. It's all metaphysical about the human
So
consciousness.
how do you know the Bible is a metaphysical parable? How do you know that? And
Because
what is
we
it
see
trying
all the
to tell us?
evidence around. I read tons of manuscripts, thousands of Greek manuscripts and Latin, which all talk about the Christian God. You know, science has origins and all mathematics. 1500s, they talk about God in mathematics. They talk about God in science, and we're talking about the greatest scientists that ever existed, who talk about God in their books. You just have to read and see.
So even if mathematicians talk about God, that doesn't mean God is real. So they could have had superstitious beliefs as well.
I was speechless. Every sentence of their books mentions God, not even every sentence.
I disagree with you. I mean, people
So
that
that
are
means
teaching
God
math,
is
they don't-
universal
so
law that
listen,
sustains all.
listen,
Yeah, sorry.
listen. When you go to school and study math and science, they never mention God at all. Science
That's the
is the
deception we live
study
in, yeah.
of observable nature, and math is the study of an objective way to describe mathematical realities. It does not require a mention of God at all. It is just the observation of and description of observable reality. That's
That's
all
the
that
mainstream
science is.
narrative of 21st century science. They removed God. That happens throughout the ages. They slowly
It's
remove God
because
from
he's
all the
completely
books.
unnecessary, and
And
it's a
guess what?
deception. There is
When
no
they remove
evidence of
God, they remove the true self of you. So they separate you from your own self, true self, which is referred to the Bible where Christ is
The
within.
true
Do you know
self
what?
is not the true
Even the
self.
Quran says that God is within. Even the Hinduism says
Okay.
that God is within.
You-
Sorry,
You
don't
just
kick me.
went off the deep end.
Don't kick me. Don't kick.
Yeah.
All right, let's let up the guest that I asked to come up. He was previously Amish and deconstructed.
All right. So I see a comment, Johnny Blaze. How do we all get here? Your parents did this, and then that produced a child, and that's how you got here. Their parents did that, and that's how they got here. So we know how babies are born. And when you say, how did we get here? I know you're not asking, how did each individual person get here? Because you know how babies are born. But if you need a scientific explanation, I believe the best one that I would take, and I don't take this as absolute truth because I don't, this is not my field of study, but I know that they have found the basic building blocks of life on asteroids. And when you have a planet like Earth that is in the right habitable zone for life to exist and develop, when you have the basic building blocks of life floating around in space, and you have a place like Earth where the conditions for life are possible, when you combine those two things, it's just like a seed falling out of a tree, falling on fertile ground, and then when the proper nutrients and water and sunlight hit this seed, then it develops a tree or a plant that grows from it. So I believe human life and all life is more justifiably explained through a seed, such as amino acids on an asteroid, landing on a fertile ground, which is planet Earth, and then you get the development of life that comes from that. This explains life far more consistently and scientifically than saying that there's an invisible man in the sky that you cannot provide even a single data point for, just a philosophical argument only. All right, so who we got?
Good morning.
Emmy, what's up?
I just had a few questions, and I guess because I come from an Amish background, and in 2018, when converted to, say, regular people,
Yeah.
a couple of years after
The English, right?
well,
Aren't we
yes.
Okay.
My actually now wife and I, I don't like to use the term English. I like to use the term as regular people.
I'm a Viking.
I understand that term.
And I guess I just kind of wanted to explain how I got, and I love what you're saying. It makes perfectly good sense. And it's kind of the same term I came, because within the Amish culture, we were not supposed to read the Bible too much. Otherwise, we would get confused, and therefore we would leave the church. So I can't say that I know a lot about the Bible. I know verses, I know, here and there. But a lot of what happened within the Amish culture, and still does to this day, is what I couldn't understand up until 7 years ago when I left the culture, when I finally was like, I can't do it, and lost my faith altogether. And that was, there's a lot of abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, any kind of abuse you could think of goes on. So as long as the church or the bishop or the members, elders, whatever you want to call them, they get to decide which one was like if somebody gets raped and the bishop rapes somebody.
Emmy, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. We have to kind of censor what we say on TikTok. So we can't say the R word. You can say graped, put a G in front of it, and you can't say KILL and SEX. Those words are sensitive for TikTok.
Okay, I apologize.
That's okay.
But when that happens, then the bishops, and they decide, well, it was an act of God. That was God, or they did an evil thing. The devil put that in their mind. But then when something good happens, it was God. But leaving the community or leaving the church, that's the devil, that's sin. It doesn't matter what kind of Christian or what kind of religion you had outside of the Amish culture. It was the devil. The devil got you. It was over.
And that's just a way to control people. You say, this is what we want you to believe, and if you believe anything different than what we want you to believe, then we will say that's evil. And if you believe what we want you to believe, we'll say that's good. It's just control.
Exactly. And that's what, even my parents, I had so many questions. And the one question, when I did leave the culture, they said, I forget where it is, Matthews, thou shalt honor your father and mother. And they spin it around as like, I have to obey my parents as long as I live. So whatever they want. So I ask them, if they were a drunkard, whatever they may have been, then God exempts you. So so my question always to them, how do I know if it's God, if it's the devil, what is? And I guess that's where I kind of you know, in I guess it was 2018 or 1920ish when, yeah, I converted all the way, and I was going through a divorce with my Amish, which she's still Amish, now my ex-wife. And when they told the children, my children were small, that they could lie to me because I'm not Amish, so God doesn't care because I'm going to hell anyway. So that's when I converted all the way and I have not prayed since, and my life has been going a lot better than before when I was depending on an invisible, some speck of source or whatever you want to call in the sky. I was depending on him to make my life better instead of saying, hey, you know, get your crap together, take your life in your hands and do what needs to be necessary. Therefore, you know, 6 years of not praying, my life has changed dramatically from what it was. It was in the gutter.
I just want to say I'm proud of you. I know how much courage you had to muster up to leave the Amish community. So I give you a standing ovation for doing that.
Yeah. And so Patrina and I left our religions as well, but I believe leaving the Amish culture is probably a more intense situation than what we did because, you know, I did get kicked out of a part of my family. Another part of my family still accepts me as they did before, but you had to completely uproot your entire culture, and so that is harder. You uprooted not only your faith but your whole culture, and so yeah, that was very difficult, and I applaud you as well, and I do think that you made the right decision. So that culture is a controlling, manipulative culture, and I do think that you are much better off now than before.
Thank you so much. Because going back, and I guess that's what really, and to this day, it does bother me. It shouldn't, but I guess it's what you've done your whole life. But when this happened to my girls, I didn't know for 2 years. And then my parents, to this day, it's my fault because my brother got devastated because I left the culture, and that's why he did what he did to my girls. So yeah, it's not
Are you saying your girls were raped?
the M word, but yes,
Oh,
yes.
Wait a
wow.
second. You're saying your brother
By
unalived
your
your
brother?
children?
No. Molested.
Molested.
Yes, yes. But they turned it around, and even to my brother, they told my brother that it's not his fault. It was
Wow.
my fault because he was devastated because I left the culture. So now, I mean, how do you?
So are you saying that he didn't grape them, he just he touched them or something?
Multiple times. Yes,
Okay. And that was after you left?
correct. Right after I left.
So these children, he was close to them, but he didn't touch them like that while you were there, but when you left, he started touching them.
Correct.
What was a year after?
Yeah, I guess about a year after.
Wow.
It sounds to me like he was afraid of you, and once you were out of the way, he could do what he wanted to do. Because he thought that you could protect your children, but when you were out of the picture, then he felt like they were easy targets.
I guess that's because my wife, she actually started a blog and she writes a lot about it. And because she gets accused, and maybe that's a lot where it comes in the tension between like the whole culture and me too. Like I'm the most hated former Amish, ex-Amish. I call myself Nomish, not Amish, so it's Anna. Because she's accused of being a witch.
Your
So,
current wife is?
yes.
My sister was accused of that too because she was trying to divorce her husband.
But they went as far as spreading throughout from Missouri to New York, all over, stating that my now wife is a witch because she switched the paperwork in our divorce and made it look like my ex-wife had filed for divorce, but really she didn't, but she did. So I brought it up to the bishop. I was like, I thought the Amish don't divorce. And he's like, oh no. So I pulled it up on my phone and I said, well, what is this? My name is the respondent. He said, well, whose name is that? And he pointed at the bottom. I said, that's my ex-wife's attorney. He said, exactly. She didn't divorce. It was her attorney that did the divorce. I was like, oh.
Well, so I'm curious, why does it matter who divorced who in your view?
The only thing that matters to me as far as that goes, because that's their whole basis of their religion. Like their cult is they do not sue, they do not divorce, like none of that happens in them. But they just switch it around. And I guess that's how everything goes in that culture is
It's okay for the man, but not the woman. Is that what you're saying?
not necessarily the man or the woman, but they changed their whole narrative. So whenever something else comes around, they're like, oh crap, we're going to have to change this in order to make it make sense. So
I have to go get my phone
One of the
charger.
first things that I started researching, Emmy, when I left my 30-year cult religion, I was a charismatic Christian for 30 years, was hell. Because that was the main thing that drew me into that religion. Because I wasn't born into this religion. I was converted in my 20s.
oh wow.
So, yeah, so I started researching hell to see if it was really real or not. And when I found out it wasn't real, I was blown away that I was lied to for 30 years.
I know exactly how you feel, because hell was the prime tool that my culture used. And I remember, well, actually my wife probably remembers better than I do, the first time when I said something about, "Oh, I know I'm going to go to hell for what I'm doing." And she said, hell what? What are you talking about, hell? And I almost wrecked my truck, like trying to stop. Like, what are you talking about? You ain't scared of hell? She's like, you are in hell. What are you talking about? So it kind of...
Yeah, exactly.
So now, I mean, they hardly come talk to me which I live a mile away from.
That's what I said. I've been there and got the T-shirt. Will you take me to Golden Corral?
Yeah, that's what it was. She said, I've been to hell, got the T-shirt. Will you take me to Golden Corral? But I guess like her background was so much different, and I just could not grasp it.
So was she raised in a religion at all?
No. She would just go to like Pentecostal church and make fun of them. And
yeah, that's what I was saved in a Pentecostal church.
But no, her aunt, like she has like relatives and stuff, but not directly. She was more Louisiana, so voodoo.
So Emmy, you don't believe in hell now, right?
Absolutely not. I guess hell to me now is what I went through. Like I've been like, but not what Christianity.
So do you believe when you die you cease to exist? You don't have any conscious existence anymore?
Me personally, I love research. I love history. I know for a fact once you go under, you're dirt. You're done. Like it's over.
Yeah. That's what the evidence is overwhelmingly supports.
Exactly.
Is that life is only the process that we experience between birth and death. There is no experience of life before birth or after death. So this is your life. This is your chance to live. And you need to live your life on your terms instead of being controlled and manipulated by other people who have mental problems and, false manipulative beliefs.
Yep. Cherish each day you get because it goes by fast when you get older.
Yep.
I agree. And I appreciate it because I guess that's where I finally become myself and realize that this is my only chance. And then my own, like my siblings, several of them already told me, they said, but you do understand it's not about you. You have to think about the family. I was like, really? So I'm living this life. I have to support myself. But when it comes to trying to be the perfect family, I have to fill the hole. I'm not there.
Emmy, there's a woman on TikTok. I know her pretty well. Her name is Mary. She's called Misfit Amish. I don't know if you know her on here or not, but she would probably be a very good person for you to connect with. She left the Amish society as well.
We're actually related.
Oh, really?
We were born in the
Okay.
same. We were born in the same community, but we figured that out afterwards.
Okay, awesome.
But yes, I know who you're talking about, and I appreciate it. So, yeah, it was interesting. Well, I appreciate it, and I'll let somebody else talk. But I love listening to other people's perspectives. I don't know. It's very interesting to me.
Well, so Emmy, the main goal of me being on TikTok is to help people learn how to distinguish what is true. So that's why I have my name is Jeff for Truth, because I know that we've all been manipulated and lied to and deceived into believing ridiculous nonsense. I was one of them who believed in ridiculous nonsense also. And so, there's so many people that just believe in ghosts and demons and heaven and hell and gods and all sorts of ridiculous things. Even I had a Hindu on here that, people that believe in reincarnation. There is no evidence for any of these supernatural things, no life after death. And so, and everybody's not, in fact, there's a bunch of people that do not want to know the truth. They love their myths and fantasies and cultures, but I am the kind of person that I want to know the truth. And people will say they want the truth, but then when you start talking about the truth, they get uncomfortable. So I'm for the people that want to know the truth. And when I say something, I believe that I can back up what I say with factual evidence. So even when I believed the Bible, I was arguing for what the Bible taught under the assumption that the Bible was true or that it was the Word of God. So I would say I still had the mindset back then that if the Bible is true, then this is what it says. And this is what it means. If, like people want to argue that there's a Trinity so I'm curious. In the Amish, they don't believe in a Trinity, right? What does the Amish believe about the deity of Jesus?
Okay, so the Amish, they're all about King James Bible. They believe about Jesus. They yeah, I'll get to that question. I guess their main thing is the King James Bible, and they will just pick and choose what they take out of it. Like, not all of it fits their narrative, therefore they don't participate in them portions. But
what do they believe about Jesus? Is he God or the Son of God?
He is the Son of God.
Right. Not so they don't take the Trinity position, right?
I guess I'm not sure what the
So
Trinity.
the Trinity is that the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit all make up one God. So there's only one God according to a Trinitarian, but that one God can pray to himself. He can ask himself to do, to let this cup pass from me, or he can pray to himself and say, let your will be done and not my will. So it's a completely illogical, irrational conclusion that Jesus is God, but yet he prayed to God, but he was really praying to himself. It's ridiculous.
But I guess that's kind of, I don't know. I don't understand how. I'm still to this day, after 30 years in it, I don't know how. But it was like the God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. But if you question, like, nobody had the answers. It was just a bunch of delusional crapheads.
So I understand what you're saying, because in the Church of Christ that I grew up in, we didn't really talk about the Trinity very much. We never, the preachers would never preach the Trinity. And you could mention Trinity, but nobody would ask questions. They would just say, okay, whatever, Trinity, whatever, who cares? And so I believe that's what you're saying about
Yeah,
the
it's
Amish.
kind
They
of
don't actively teach the Trinity. They'll quote Father, Son, and Holy Spirit because that's what the King James says, or Holy Ghost. But they don't actually allow questions or critical thinking when you want to say, is 3 and 1 the same thing?
critical
And
thinking is out of vocabulary for Amish.
Right. Well,
this
for
is
all religious people. That's not
this
just
is
Amish.
Okay.
All religious people are
yeah.
incapable of critical thinking.
One thing I never understood about the Amish is the reason why they don't drive cars and have electricity or phones or anything like that is because they're not supposed to be in the world, right? They're supposed to
They're,
be
they're not supposed to be of the world. They're
of the
supposed to be
world.
in the world.
Okay, right. But yet they don't really follow that because they shop in the grocery stores. They use tools like carpenter tools, battery operated saws, and things like that. So they are still participating in the things of the world when they need to.
Well, but Trina, as long as you can, if you can present a strong enough case that you're not like everybody else, then you can say, well, hey, we still use horse and buggy and we don't have air conditioning, and but we can still use power tools because it helps us make our
Yeah,
electric shows.
yeah, that's
So,
what I
but
never
they can still
understood.
right. So it's not about being consistent, or it's just
Because
about presenting
I
a
live
front.
in Missouri, so I have Amish that live right down the road from me, and I shop in the same short stores that they shop in. So I'm like, why are you guys shopping in this worldly store? Why aren't you growing all of your food? You shouldn't be in the grocery store at all.
'Cause are you like in center Missouri or?
Yeah, Central Missouri.
Oh crap!
Why?
That's my ex-wife lives.
Oh, really?
But you have my.
I probably ran into her in the store then.
Is she crazy looking? Okay. But you have my wife's exact questions. Like everything you said about as far as they don't have phones, they don't have trucks. Well, I owned a truck. I paid every drop of fuel that went in that truck. I paid every part. I paid the insurance. I paid everything. But I could not drive the truck. I owned
Yeah,
the
that
phone.
doesn't make sense.
I
What?
owned a phone, but I could not have it in my name. I had it on to have it wanted. Well, I live on a main road, so the state owns like quite a bit of the right of way. I had to put my phone shack on the right of way and have my phone say in your name. Therefore, God doesn't know that I have a phone because it's not on my property and it's not in my
Well, hang on a
name.
second. So why did you have
Oh
a
my
truck
gosh.
if you didn't drive it? Why did you have a truck?
Well, first, it did not make sense to me to. Well, yeah, that's how I had a metal roll foreman. Like I had a big business, and I do construction, and I did a bunch of different businesses. Therefore, I had to get from point A to point B. I was in that truck, and that truck never moved unless I was in it. And then when I realized, wait a minute, I'm spending $80,000 a year on a driver that I pay everything that. Wait a minute, how much does it cost me to get my driver's license and the truck don't move if I'm not in it?
Oh, so you rode in it, but you just didn't drive it.
Correct.
Oh, okay,
I did everything but drive it.
right.
So as soon as Elon Musk comes out with the self-driving cars, the Amish can probably own it, and they.
Oh
But,
my gosh, I love it.
but I don't like. You see my point? It's all. It's
Yeah,
all
it doesn't make sense.
hypocrite. Like everything was hypocritical. Like my
Yeah.
parents to this day, they don't have electricity, but they have a neighbor across the road. They put their deep freezer over there. They have my sister does she makes dishes and puts prints and stuff on it. So she has to have a kiln, which is 1200 degrees or whatever, which is electricity. She has that over there. They don't have it in their name, but they do have those things.
Right.
And
So
they think God doesn't know they have those things as long as it's not in their name and in their house.
yeah, of course, God wouldn't know
Well,
that. They don't have the paperwork.
So God's not all knowing and all seeing.
well. So I'm curious. I'm even if they're using the neighbor's deep freeze and things like that. Does the neighbor require them to give them free jars of jelly or something like that to help pay for it?
No, most of the time they do pay for the electric. It's just not in their name.
So they would give them money, say, here, I'll give you $20 a month if you'll let me put this in your deep freeze or whatever.
Yes. Well, no, they have their own deep freeze. So they'd be like, okay, this deep freeze is going to take $30 a month of electricity. Therefore, here's your $30.
Okay, so they actually pay for the electricity.
Yes, they pay for.
But the electric bill doesn't come in their name, so that's all that matters.
Correct.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Hypocrisy.
Yes. It's long story short.
Well, Emmy, so I want to assure you that you made the right decision
Yes.
in leaving the Amish. And, you know, this world, the world of real people has its problems as well, but at least you're not being controlled and manipulated by that process, you know, that group of people.
Right.
Now, there's a whole different group of people that want to control and manipulate you out in the real world. But, I mean, some of them are religious people. Some of them are politicians and lawyers. And there's a whole host of evil people that just want to control and manipulate everybody, no matter where you are. So you didn't escape all evil when you left the Amish.
I think I met them all the way from the politics. I've met all the, but I know what you're saying, and I do appreciate it. And I just have one more question before I have to hop off of here. And that was just, do you think, in your opinion, do you think people choose to believe in God? And like you said, you preach, or not preach, but whatever, the truth. You're all about the truth. And people want to hear it until they start hearing it, and then they change their mind. Do you think that is because people like to believe that they have a second chance if they mess this life up?
Yeah.
Yep.
So the number one motivator for believing in God is about the fear of death. So it's the fear of death that causes people to be so easily manipulated by religion. And so, you know, when bad things happen, you know, people have this desire for justice and fairness, you know, equity. And we all do. I have those desires. And when I see that this world is so corrupt and evil, there's so many lies and people that are manipulating other people, I'd say, man, wouldn't it be nice if there was a world or a life where we weren't controlled and manipulated by evil intentions? And so this says, hey guys, there is a place that nothing bad happens, but you have to believe what I tell you to believe. You have to act the way I tell you to act. You have to do the things I tell you to do. And then you get to go. So the desire to live in a place where there is no manipulation becomes the very thing that causes people to control and manipulate other people. So it's a constant vicious cycle of people controlling and manipulating people. They find your weakness and then they exploit it so that they can control and manipulate you.
Oh, I agree with you 100% on that. Thank you all so much, and I'm glad you all seen and got out of. I praise everybody that gets out of there. Like,
Yeah.
do your
And
own
so-
free will.
Yeah. So thanks for stopping in, Amy. It's nice talking to you.
Me, I sent you a follow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
See you later, Amy.
Bye.
All right. I'm pulling Kevin Brown in.
Okay, Jeff, I've got to drop. I got a baby shower I got to go to, but
Okay.
thanks for having me up.
No problem. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Hey, Kevin.
How many months now I beg you to buy me a drink? You can't buy me a drink.
Kevin,
I go up the road and come to say I can buy
you
it.
see me answer now? The people them a walk, them just walk up the road.
Me never ask nothing about that.
Listen what I say.
We don't need to hear that. What you say.
And me tell them
Hold
say
on.
me call a guy for them.
We don't need to get into that.
Why me and the man are Jews.
All right. Well, Kevin, you got some stuff going on. All right. So that's everybody out of the guest box. So if anybody wants to hop up and have a conversation, then let's go. So, you know, the Bible is not true. And I'm not here to argue with irrational people that can't handle the truth. I'm here to help people understand the truth that religion is a scam.
Hey, what's up, Jeff?
Hey, Dusty.
Hey, probably don't remember we talked a while back on when I was a Christian, and I never really got a chance to talk to you and learn from you. I've been going around watching all the deconstructing lies because just studying it myself, like I can just see it's all a bunch of bullshit. So,
Yeah.
like, yeah, and I've completely deconstructed from Christianity altogether. To me, oops, sorry. To me, all religions are man-made cults.
That is truth. They are all man. There's no evidence for God at all. People believe in a God, and when people have to threaten other people to believe in a God with eternal torture or hell or whatever, that should be a number one clue that it's not true.
Right.
If God was real, then He could demonstrate His existence. He wouldn't have to threaten. He wouldn't have to send humans to threaten other humans that they have to believe in faith with no evidence. So it's a scam.
Yep. The Bible
Faith
itself is the Bible itself is what made me. And I'm like, this is an evil God. If this God's real, and they say that the God of the New Testament is the God of the Old Testament. So if that's true, then there's a lot of evil shit that God did in that Bible.
Well, but see, this is a common misconception that the God of the Old Testament was worse than the God of the New Testament. He's not. The God of the New Testament, I would say, is worse than the God of the Old Testament, because the God of the New Testament is all about believing Him with no evidence or be tortured for eternity. There was no concept of hell in the Old Testament.
Right.
The concept of hell comes in the New Testament. And so the God of the New Testament is threatening. Now, the Old Testament God threatened violence also, but the violence that God threatened was the destruction of your city and your temple, and sending you away into slavery for 70 years or 100 years or whatever. So, He threatened evil things as well. He even threatened, having your wife raped,
Yep.
and all sorts of horrible things that mothers would eat their children. So horrible things in the Old Testament. But the New Testament is just as horrible. So don't ever think that the New Testament God is better than the Old Testament God. He's not.
Well, I think that comes from, what happened was when I first started deconstructing, I started with the Universal Reconciliation group. And, they were teaching me that there really was no hell in the New Testament. It's all mistranslated, blah, blah, blah. It's lost in language. And so, but then I went from that to completely just realizing and seeing that it's all a bunch of bullshit. It's all just fairy tales made by man.
I believe that. So this is the way it went with me as well. In fact, I wrote a book when I still believed the Bible, but I took the Universal Reconciliation perspective, the preterist, that Jesus actually accomplished all things, reconciling humanity back to God, and that all the references to hell were just the reference to the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 CE. And so I wrote a book about that, and it's a good book, but I had to write a second book because when I realized that the Bible is not true, it changed everything. So,
right, that's what I wanted to learn from you, because I know you're the one that teaches about how Christianity, pretty much the New Testament Christianity, was invented by the Roman Catholics, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't call them Catholic yet because Catholicism didn't exist yet, but the Romans are the ones that originated the Jesus story. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
they developed the Catholic Church, hundreds of years later, but they created the initial story. Even in the late first, early second century.
Yeah, and it's like they tried to take the Judaism and mix it with this new whatever Christianity, and it was just crazy.
So right, what they did is Romans conquered the Jews in war, and then they took their culture, their religion, their holy scriptures, their religion, their ideology, and then they Hellenized it. They made it pro-Roman. So because Judaism is all about how Israel is God's special chosen people. And so this is obviously not going to go over well in a Gentile world where everybody's not Israel. So they said, you know what, how can we make this God of Israel become the God of the Gentiles? And so that's what Christianity is all about, is converting the God of Israel into the God of the Gentiles. And so that's why they did it. They defeated them in war, and then they built off of their religion and converted their God to a Gentile God. And the Gentiles were the Romans. So when you read Gentile in the New Testament, you really should replace that word with Romans. And when I say Romans, I don't mean people that just lived in the city of Rome. I mean people that lived in the Roman Empire, which was the entire Mediterranean coastline. From
Right.
Israel, Turkey, Greece, Italy, the entire Mediterranean was the Roman Empire.
And then what? So who was when the first so you're saying that this started before the 7 ecumenical councils?
Oh yeah, yeah. So the first ecumenical council was the Council of Nicaea in 325 under Constantine, and so we have evidence of manuscripts and references. Most everything we have is, well, we do not have anything from the first century, nothing at all. We only have 2nd century and 3rd century stuff about Christianity. And so the idea of Christianity was in development in the 2nd century, but it wasn't until the 4th century under Constantine that they said, you know what, let's just make Christianity the one religion and require everybody to be Christian. And so then they had to start organizing these ecumenical councils so that they could establish their doctrines. Because up until then, it was a religion in development. But at that point, after, under Constantine and after, they were trying to make it the one religion for all people.
Right. Yep. And you can see how it's all man-made, every bit of it. And I mean, I guess I haven't completely let go of the whole, because I kind of lean towards more with, I know there's not really any actual physical evidence of the supernatural, but I haven't completely let go of the maybe there's a God, just not the God of the Bible, not the God of religion, so
I was there at one point too. In fact, even when I wrote Jesus Demigod the first time, which was in 2023, I think, I said in the preface, I am not an atheist. I modified in 2024. I made a 2nd edition to Jesus Demigod, and one of the things I wanted to take out was when I said I am not an atheist, because I was fighting atheism in 2023. By 2024, I was like, no, I don't even want to fight atheism anymore. I think this is the appropriate position to take. But I was disappointed after I edited the entire book. I thought I took that out, and I think it's still there now. So I think it still says I'm not an atheist, but I technically am. But it's still a super good book.
It just means a lack of belief, because I know a lot of people say agnostic atheist. I guess that's what I would be considered, because I don't completely say that there's not, that there maybe, I say I don't know. There could be, a creator or whatever. But it's definitely not the God of the Bible. It's definitely not any kind of religion or any kind of that kind of bullshit.
Right. So correct. Atheism is just the lack of belief in a God. It's not the affirmative claim that there is no God.
Right.
But I don't even like to consider myself as agnostic, because I would say even if there is a God, he's using all his supernatural powers to remain hidden. He does not, or anonymous. He does not want us to know who he is if he exists. And so therefore he's not promised us heaven or threatened hell, or he doesn't have any rules and regulations that he expects us to live by. He's not going to solve our problems. He doesn't answer our prayers. And so that leaves us, for all intents and purposes, in a world where there is no, even if there is a God, there might as well not be one, because he doesn't do anything. If this world is going to be fixed, if we're going to solve our problems, we're not going to solve them by praying to any God or following any rules where God starts making things better. The only way we're ever going to solve any of our problems is if we do it ourselves. Even if there is a God, God's not going to fix it. So that leaves us in the position that atheism is the correct position, because the only way we can make progress in a world is in a world where we don't expect God to make changes, but we do it ourselves.
That's what I've been saying. If you wanna blame, because it seems to me Christians and everybody that's religious wants something to blame. They don't want to look in the mirror. They don't want to take responsibility and look in the mirror. So that's why I always say, if you want to look at God, look in the mirror, because I don't look at God like religion, like Christianity looks at it like that. Like you were just explaining, I look at God as the source of everything, like energy, like you know what I mean, like it's not even like how Christians believe. It would be like to me it's like God is like the very essence of life, like life itself, like creation, like consciousness, sentience, like that to me is God, like it's us.
Well, right, but for me, I would choose
God.
not to use the word God.
Right? Yeah, it should be called God, right?
So I even edited a really good video recently where, if you look at this world, universe that we live in, and if you look at it, objectively, and you see, we all struggle to survive. I mean, living is a hard job. In fact, you can look at this in the wild. When animals are eating their young, or somebody else's animals are eating somebody else's eggs or whatever, and so their children don't even live to see the sun one day. And humans also struggle to survive in this world. And so to paint this picture that God created some wonderful place that humans could live is a delusional. Now, this is an amazing place, but the video makes a really good point that if an almighty, all-knowing, all-loving God created this world, then we would expect it to be a lot better than it is. Because there is so much pain and suffering and death and destruction and struggle to survive, that it doesn't make sense that an all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful God would have created this universe. I mean, when you look and say there's no life on Mars, there's no life on Venus, there's no life anywhere else that we can detect. Now, there may be life 4 million light years away or something, but nowhere that we can detect. And you say, well, it looks like life is an extremely rare opportunity. And it is a very difficult process. But if you compare the two possible causes for the universe, one, there's an almighty, all-knowing, all-loving God who created it, or two, nature. It is a natural process that amazingly even allows life to exist. So if God is the responsible party for the universe, you'd say, well, I would expect him to have done a better job. But on the other hand, if life is the result of nature or natural processes, then we can say this is an amazing thing that nature could create life. And we should praise nature or natural things and say, look, life has overcome so many obstacles that it's amazing that we exist. But if God did it, we can say God should have done a better job. So to me, that was a really good point, that nature actually deserves praise because it did an amazing thing. Because it's like a newborn baby. If a newborn baby can speak a language, it doesn't have to learn the language. Maybe it learned it while it was in the mother's womb or something like that. It would be amazing that if it could just say, "Hi, Mama," simply because now maybe it can't speak an entire language. All it can say is "Hi, Mama," because this baby, Mama, for 9 months was speaking to her belly saying, "Hi, Mama, hi, Mama, hi, Mama," and the baby could hear that in the womb, and he came out and said, "Hi, Mama." That would be an amazing thing. But it's only amazing because an infant is not expected to be able to speak. But if you had someone that was 50 years old and the only thing they could say is "Hi, Mama," then you would say, that's not very impressive. You should have learned more than "Hi, Mama" at the age of 50. So that's the difference between nature and God. If God, the almighty, all-knowing, all-loving, all-powerful being created the universe, we would expect the universe to be better than just saying "Hi, Mama." But if nature did it, we can be amazed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Because like I don't even look at God as that. Like, I mean, even if I call it God, I wouldn't say he's an all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful entity that's separate from us. Like, to me, it's just like the essence of life. I guess you can call it nature if you want to call it nature, because like how we can create life, we as humans can create life. So and whatever. I don't know if I mean. I don't know if it's like intelligent design. I don't know, but to me, that's what it is. It's just the very
well. But see, so I think this is the point I'm making. That when you observe this universe, it does not show signs of intelligent design. It shows either unintelligent design or an amazing natural process that has a lot of flaws and errors and struggles, but yet it's still amazing that it was able to get to where it is right now. So if God designed babies to have cancer, leukemia, or whatever, and if God designed for humans, in the past, the life expectancy was only 30 or 40 years. There was probably a whole huge generation of people that could only, if they lived to be 20, 30 years old, they were old men. Well, through modern medicine, which is through the process of human study and scientific processes, we've raised the life expectancy to like 70, 80 years now. So humans had to raise the life expectancy from 30 to 80 through medicine, not from God. So God designed a world where people could only live 20 or 30 years, but humans have been able to, through medicine and science, to extend the life expectancy to 80 years.
Right. That's the way I look at it. Like I look at it is if anything's God, it's humans. Like if you want to say something's God, then look in the mirror, because like that's the way I look at it. And then in the whole natural thing, like, okay, you got like, well, I guess when it comes to creation itself, like as in the nature, but then when you talk about humans, I feel like the humans are more complex than trees and rocks and stuff like that. So like, I don't know. I just haven't got really to that part yet of how you would look at God in that. But I don't look at it as an all-knowing, all-loving, separate entity that's the Sky Daddy. Like I don't look at it like I look at it as like us, like the very essence of life.
And so I think that it would help your case if you didn't call that God, but if you called it natural processes, because then if you don't assign a like intelligent, purposeful being, like a mind who had a purpose, but you talk about the amazing processes of nature. We can just look at the birth of a human or any animal for that matter. It is amazing that you can take a sperm cell and an egg cell, combine it in the womb of a woman, and it will rapidly grow for 9 months inside the womb. And then as soon as it's born, it starts slowly developing. And it takes a lot of, it's amazing that these, what do they call them? Stem cells or whatever, that they can rapidly create 10 fingers and 10 toes on a consistent basis. And, a brain and mind and all the things that most humans who are born normally, have all the same basic characteristics.
I guess what I'm still stuck on is like, where did the first mind come from? Like, okay, like it's kind of like the egg and the chicken thing. Like that's what I'm still stuck on. Like, what?
Well, so
was it just like a process of like, did we come from monkeys? Like a process of evolution? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I believe the overwhelming evidence, the best evidence that we have for the existence of humans is through evolution. Every single branch of science agrees with the evolutionary process. Every branch. And so, you can look at genetics, you can look at geology, you can look at cosmology or chemistry or biology, or every single branch of science. All the data that they have supports the evolutionary theory.
And you don't feel we need intelligent design for the evolutionary process at all?
No, I mean so you can describe the evolutionary process by just looking at natural selection, the practical application of natural selection. And so if you have a being, let's just call it a rat. Let's just talk about rats. they reproduce rapidly. They can create a bunch, and if they have a rat that has a mutation and that rat is not mentally capable of finding food as well as other rats are, then that rat is going to die early. That rat is not going to reproduce as much. And so that mutation of that rat is going to not be propagated. Now, if you have a strong rat that is intelligent, that knows how to find food, that knows how to get there quicker, and knows how to not tell its neighbors about the food, then that rat is going to live longer, going to be stronger, and he's going to be able to reproduce more, and he's going to be able to pass his genes to other generations more than the rat that's not capable of finding food. And so that's how you can naturally increase the intelligence of a population through natural selection and evolution.
Well, if natural selection and adaptation is evolution, then that still doesn't make any sense to me, because like a dog comes from a dog, a cat comes from a cat, and wouldn't a human come from humans? Like, how would we evolve from something else to be a human? That's what I don't.
So I used to struggle with this as well, and I still struggle a little bit with it, but I like to think of it this way. When one person has a child, that child shares a lot of, especially DNA. That child will share a lot of similar DNA with its parents, but yet that child is a completely different. In fact, I've got 3 daughters, so I don't even have a son. So I have 3 daughters. Every single one of my daughters is a completely different sex than I am. And so they share a lot of my DNA, but yet they're not even the same sex that I am. And so when they have children, their child is going to have, a lot of similarities, but even more differences than I have. And so each generation you get away from the parent, you will become less and less like the original parent. And so the greater distance you have between an ancestor and its descendant, the more differences that you're going to have. And the genetic similarities that humans have with apes are remarkably similar. I mean, we can even look at apes and see they have 10 fingers and 10 toes, and they're anatomically almost identical to humans. The biggest difference is the ability to speak. Now, even apes have an amazing intellectual capacity to do things that even humans can't do, because I've seen some studies with apes where they will flash like some numbers on a screen, and they will be in a random order, and they'll just show it for like 2 seconds, and then the ape will remember where all those random numbers were, and then they give them a treat if they get it right. And so these apes, I couldn't even do that, and I'm an extremely intelligent person, and I couldn't do that. But apes have demonstrated an amazing ability to even be able to identify numbers in the correct order in random sequences after only looking at it for 2 seconds. So all you got to do is say, now, so I don't have a big problem saying that humans and apes could have a common ancestor. We could call him the caveman or whatever. So maybe there was a caveman a long time ago that shared, some things more with apes and some things more with humans. Maybe he couldn't speak, maybe he could, I don't know. But to say that, to go back beyond that and say, well, maybe, do humans share a common ancestor with a fish? That's a lot more difficult for me to process. But I think there's a solution to this problem that doesn't even require, all life evolving from a common ancestor. Because I believe that life could have different ancestors, completely different ancestors. So, and the way you can have completely different ancestors is through having a different starting point. And we can have a starting point of an asteroid that is carrying the basic building blocks of life, amino acids. And if we get hit by an asteroid that's carrying amino acids, and we've found asteroids with amino acids, and this asteroid, these amino acids scattered in a bunch of different directions, and somehow these combined and created this lizards, and these combined and created the eventual, apes. So it's possible that lizards and apes don't even have a common ancestor. But humans and apes most likely do have a common ancestor, but lizards and apes might not, because life could have evolved with a different starting point, with different amino acids from a different asteroid that created lizards, and this other one created apes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess because like I know, when it comes to subspecies, yeah, like I would agree that we do have a lot of genetically similarities to apes, but we also do to bananas too. So like the way I look at it is, I guess until the scientific community, because I don't really think there is no consensus in the scientific community of a common ancestor, right? I don't think so.
I think there is.
For apes?
For human evolution, I believe there is a consensus in science that humans do have common ancestors with apes.
I'd have to look into it. I don't know for sure. Yeah, I've always thought that they're still looking for that missing link or whatever it's called.
No, I think it's well established.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know it's like the leading theory of the scientific community is evolution for the start of life, and I guess the Big Bang. Because abiogenesis is after the start of life.
Yeah.
Or
evolution really doesn't address biogenesis. Biogenesis,
Right.
which is the start of life,
Right.
is a completely different study. But that's why when I saw this information about the basic building blocks have been observed and found on asteroids, that this tells me that is a rational explanation for biogenesis, which is planting a seed of the basic building blocks of life in an environment that will nurture life, and say that this whole thing could have happened by an amazing process of natural processes, that it doesn't require a supernatural creator.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely could be.
All right, well, I got a guy begging to get in, so let me see what
Brother.
this is.
All right, brother. I'll talk to you later.
See you later.
Have a good one.
All right, Cryzo or whatever. I'll let you in. But listen, when you get here, so hey Cryzo. So
Hey, how
I
you
want to
doing?
make sure that as we progress, that it is a respectful conversation and it's an
course.
intelligent and honest conversation.
Yeah, so I came across one of your videos on my For You page. It was like a long list of arguments, roughly I think 10 or maybe 11 arguments for like against the existence of God, or at least the Abrahamic religions. And a lot of the points, yeah, they were decent. But could I maybe address one point?
Sure.
It just caught my
I know
attention
what
because
video you're talking about.
it was actually one argument that not a lot of people bring, is that polytheism, the existence of multiple gods, is just as likely as monotheism. This is an argument that I've not really heard as much.
Okay. Yeah.
So do you wanna like go into detail, or can I provide my
So
counter?
my point in that video is that if a God is possible, then many gods are just as possible. So there's no reason to say that there's only one God when we don't even have evidence for that God. If you believe a God could exist, then there's no reason to say that many gods don't exist. That's the point.
Yeah, so but my position would be that polytheism is like logically incoherent, because it depends, it all rests upon what we define God as. In the theistic tradition, God is defined as a being that's absolutely perfect, infinite, and necessary, right? If multiple gods exist, it logically follows they must be distinct each other from one another in terms of essence or being. Otherwise, they will not be multiple, they will just be one, right? To be distinct, each god must lack something another god possesses, right? And a being that lacks something is not absolutely perfect or infinite in both essence, right? Therefore, these multiple gods would just be like either imperfect or just finite gods.
All right, so let me address it. So definitely, I would concede that in a polytheistic world, the gods would not be infinitely perfect. So these gods would have to have flaws or lack something in some way.
Yeah.
But it makes more sense that we have a polytheistic existence of a multiple flawed gods than it is to believe. In fact, I would say it's more likely that we have flawed gods in the plural than it is to conclude that we have one perfect God, because that is completely incompatible with the reality that we see, that there is one perfect God. Because if there was a perfect God, then we wouldn't have all the unnecessary pain and suffering and injustice in the world. That there's no justification for one perfect God, but yet it's actually more logical to believe that there's a whole bunch of gods that are just, playing games, or maybe they're not very smart, or maybe they're evil, who knows, but they're playing games with us, like a chess board, or like what's that movie that Jim Carrey was in, where he was in a fake world and everybody was watching him on TV? I forget.
Yeah, so
like
I
The
guess
Sims.
yeah, I kind of understand your point. So as regarding, you would just see both these ideas, polytheism and monotheism, just being incoherent, right? You're not actually saying that, polytheism is just as coherent, because I don't think so. I don't think they're coherent on both
Well,
levels.
so
So I
I
don't think there's
believe
really a point.
I believe that if we're going to imagine a fictional realm that we have no evidence for, like, a spiritual realm or something, if we're going to allow an entire spiritual realm to exist, it would be more plausible that there were many gods that were just playing games and being entertained by pain and suffering and joy and injustice or whatever. It would be more logical, more compatible with our reality, that there are multiple gods that are just playing games with us, than it would be to think that there is only one God who is perfect and almighty.
Okay, I understand. So this is not really an argument; it's just like a side point. So I feel like the actual substance of the matter, you really have a problem with the problem of evil, I would assume, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So have you heard of like Augustine's argument, like Saint Augustine?
I probably
He's a
have, but I don't know which one that is right now.
Yeah, he's a classical theist, right? So his argument was kind of similar to, pretty much the same as Thomas Aquinas, that evil is not a created substance, but rather a privation or lack of good, right? So evil is not a thing in of itself, i.e., evil does not have ontology. It's just the absence of corruption of goodness. For example, like darkness is just the absence of light. Cold is the absence of heat. These are just a lack or distortion of good, rather than a thing that is created. I.e., because we don't believe that evil is a created thing, right? And free
Right,
will.
but let me present a scenario. So, if a man kidnaps a girl, let's just say an underage girl, and then ties him up in her basement, did he actively engage in evil, or was it just his lack of love that caused him to kidnap and tie up a little girl?
I could say both in a sense. Like it would definitely be the lack of goodness. Like I wouldn't say evil is a thing in of itself.
Right, but I don't think so. I don't believe in a God anymore, and the fact that I don't believe in a God, I did not become more evil. It did not make me want to go kidnap little children and tie them up in a basement or anything.
Yeah, but
So
what would be your moral framework otherwise? Like, because you have to have another moral framework. Because I often see atheists,
so
right?
I
They
haven't.
often do an internal critique, right? Like they say stuff like, "Or if God is really, if God really exists, right, he must not be good," which doesn't make sense, because if you're doing an internal critique, then you have to like assume our theology, which is that God is the source of all goodness.
So it's illogical and irrational to assume that God is good, even if he is causing the mass unaliving and the rape of women. So this is what the theological position has to accept, that even if God says to unalive, it's good. If God says to rape, it's good. If God says to abuse women, it's good. This is illogical and irrational. It is not, it's even unintelligent. It is ridiculous for anybody to take the position that God is the source of morality especially if you think that God has demonstrated his morality in the Bible, because he has done evil, horrible injustice to millions of people in the Bible. And if you are justifying horrible, evil things in the name of God and saying that God is good no matter what, then you're not a rational, responsible person, and you should not be trusted with making any decisions in life. So my moral framework is through observation. We know through personal experience and through the study of history and humanity that when you oppress other people, that this causes pain and anguish, and that pain and anguish is not a productive way to improve society. So the way that you want to improve society is through love and mutual empathy and compassion. And so the only way to improve society and make a better world is through observational conclusions based on what is good, what has a positive outcome, and what has a negative outcome. When men are allowed to just kidnap children and tie them in their basement, we know that this is counterproductive to humanity and society. So we should conclude through observation that and intelligence that oppressing other people and enslaving other people is not the best way to improve society.
Okay, so I kind of get your point, right? Like I've had a lot of discussions with atheists on this, specifically pertaining to DCT, divine command theory, and a lot of the time they do bring out the fact that if you do believe that God is inherently just, then I could bring up like a number of nonsensical, like arbitrary, like disgusting sort of scenarios like you listed, right? And well, it wouldn't matter. I could just wave it away. Well, sure, I agree, right? But what I actually want to get to the point is, what is your actual moral framework within like atheism?
So
Like,
my
how do
moral
you-
framework
Yeah,
is
I want to ask.
human empathy. So it's observation. It's using intelligence and observation to decide what is a positive result and what is a negative result. It is observation. It is intelligence. That is my moral framework. It is called empathy, intelligence, and rational thinking.
Well, no, because like human empathy is not always correct, right? It's not always reliable because I understand that empathy is like something that's like it's an essential moral tool and a social tool, but it has limitations, right? Because it could potentially lead to irrational, like bias, even like harmful decisions.
So I agree with you. Humans sometimes make mistakes. Sometimes humans don't understand the best result. Maybe you're trying to make a good conclusion based on observation and empathy, but it turns out over time we realize that the decision that you thought you made was correct is not. So there is no objective truth, and you can't make a case for an objective truth under God either, because you would have to say that anybody that worships a different God deserves to be unalived. So in fact,
God gave me the gift of life, right? So he can just take it away. Like I don't object to it.
Your parents gave you the gift of life. There is no evidence that God gave you life.
No, but you're doing an internal critique, right? So you agree, like under theistic traditions, right? We assume that God gave us life, right?
So your assumption
that's what we say. It's not assumption. That's what we believe. That's within our theology, that God is the one that gives us life. You agree, right? Yeah, so it's just a gift.
Yeah,
like God can just take
theology.
that gift. But I know you're gonna say it's an assumption, but saying this assumption leads me to, go into the arguments pertaining to God. But I want to stay on topic. But continue. On empathy. Empathy is what I was really focused on.
So I answered your question. My
Sure.
my moral framework is called intelligence and observation. And it does require tweaking over time. Maybe we learn over time that a decision we made in the past is not the best decision. And so it should change over time. This is actually what science does. Science takes all the evidence, makes the best conclusion, but then is always open for new information, and we can modify the conclusion based on the information we obtain. There is no justification for morality under God. There is no consistent. In fact, God couldn't even figure out what was moral. Is eating pigs moral or not? Because in the Old Testament, it was immoral. And in the New Testament, it's perfectly fine. So God changed his mind about eating pigs in the Bible.
That's abrogation. It's a different concept, right? So, like we can just appeal to the fact that the Jews, right, their hearts were cold, right? I.e., that's where more forceful and more firm, strict rulings were placed upon them. But you just appeal to subjective morality, and you're trying to argue that I also appeal to subjective morality. Well, I disagree, right? God is objectively like believing in God, believing in DCT, divine command theory, is an objective moral standard that is immutable, i.e., it wouldn't change, right? It's based upon God's nature and God's essence. According to classical theism, he doesn't change.
So hang on a second.
Okay, you can go on.
So is it okay to eat pigs or not?
Yeah, like currently, sure.
Because the New Testament says so.
Yeah, I use abrogated.
I don't know what you mean by that. So
abrogated means that it was allowed at a certain time, but then it was changed to be
you're
allowed.
admitting that God is not objective moral truth, but God changes over time, and so he abrogates his rules and his morality over time. So God, even according to your view, God is not an objective moral standard. He changes over time.
No, because I already said it's an abrogation. No.
When you abrogate something, you change.
No, you just repeal it. Like it doesn't. Like it's not.
If you repeal something, you changed your mind.
I wouldn't say so.
So when God repented that he made man and he sent a flood in the days of Noah, did God change his mind about creating men? Did he think that he made a mistake?
Sure, but I'll just appeal to this as a metaphor.
Okay, so to me, what you're doing is making irrational justifications for obvious flaws in your system. So that
should I go into more detail? Huh? Because like when we're talking about the theological, interpretation of abrogation, right? Because you don't know what abrogation means. It just means to like repeal or to do away with a law, right, or formal agreement. This is according to Google.
And when you repeal
I believe in the same thing.
That means you have changed your mind. If you made a law not to eat pigs and then you repeal your own law, that means your standards have changed.
I wouldn't say so. It just means that his will is may vary over time. Sure.
So you are an irrational person, and nobody can have a conversation, an honest conversation with someone that will make excuses for lies like you're doing.
Oh, okay. So that's not my intention. My intention is
I know your intention is to appear intelligent, but you're not.
Okay, sure. But could I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, so in regards to like subjective morality, right? You just basically appeal to subjective morality, right? But if you appeal to subjective morality, it just makes morality arbitrary, right? So then like right and wrongs are just personal opinions, right? Like that means no action can really be condemned or praised in any way, since every moral stance can be changed or be equally valid in some sense or another.
So it is a process of logical, rational, intellectual decisions based on observational data. So, so some society back in the past, I mean, I question, even when people sold humans as slaves, they probably knew that this was not moral, but it was just a necessary means to an end. I mean, we're the powerful people, they're the poor people.
Yeah, I agree.
So we can justify it. Now, they might not have thought it was moral, but they might have thought it was necessary.
Yeah, so then what is the actual issue? Because since a lot of atheists, they argue against slavery, right? But the fact is, I'll give you an analogy. Let's say somewhat in the future, there's a weapon that's a laser that could instantly destroy any human being that is like, causing harm to another individual, or let's say some foreign army, right? It's just a laser that instantly kills, instantly unalives this individual. And it doesn't have any sort of, civilian casualty. But nowadays, what we use? We use bombs, right? That often entail civilians being harmed. If the people in the future, go back and argue and saying, oh, these 21st century individuals, right? They were using bombs. How barbaric, how evil. Is that really fair? I don't think so. I think slavery in a pre-modern context, you even agree it would be justified because let's say you've just been in a war, right? A lot of your people have just been demolished, right? You have to take concubines to repopulate your populace. You have to take the prisoners. Otherwise, if you just let them go, right, they're gonna attack you again. Like that was pretty much common for pre-modern warfare.
So, do you believe that war is moral?
War is definitely moral in some contexts, but not in every
I don't think
context.
so. I don't think
You don't
war
think so?
is ever moral.
Okay, so like what happens if there's like a tyrant that's absolutely evil and they're just, causing havoc and chaos
And
within the lands,
so,
causing terror?
so defending yourself is, even if you have to unalive somebody in defense of yourself, I would say it's still immoral, but it's something that you should engage in immoral act in order to defend yourself. So when someone does something more immoral, which is enacting harm on other people, then someone who is just trying to defend himself has to defend himself with something that may be immoral, because I think taking the life of another person is immoral, but doing it in defense of you or innocent people is justified. So some immoral acts will be justified.
Some immoral acts can be justified. Isn't that a contradiction?
I don't think so.
Like some immoral acts can be justified. So yeah, that's a
I don't know.
contradiction.
Maybe we would say that it's not immoral to defend yourself, even if you're unaliving somebody, if you're defending yourself. So
That doesn't make sense, right? So like if someone came into your house and like threatens like your family or whatever.
Self-defense is not immoral, in my opinion.
Yeah, but he just admitted it like the host, he's like making an argument why it would be immoral since you're taking another person's life, right?
So listen. So I was thinking out loud.
It's okay. You can retract. I don't mind.
But so any situation that causes a death of another person, there has been something immoral that happened somewhere along the way. So, defending yourself probably is not what we would consider to be immoral, but the situation that was created was caused by something that was immoral. If there was a person that walked into the gas station with a pew-pew,
yeah,
and he is threatening the life of somebody else for money, then that is the immoral act, and any consequence that came as a result of that immoral act, might not be an immoral thing. I mean, if the person behind the counter has a pew pew under the counter and he pulls it out and pops the dude, then you say, well, maybe that's not what we would call immoral. That was self-defense. But somebody might argue that even that was immoral. Maybe they say that the guy that came in, he didn't intend to hurt anybody, but he was only threatening people. It's something that should be debated through intellectual people, and we should decide based on circumstances and evidence what was justified and what was unjustified. So the guy coming in with the pew pew with intent to take money that didn't belong to him, that is indisputably immoral. Now that caused whatever consequence, whether the guy, so we could say, is it moral to put somebody in prison for life? And I think it's immoral to put somebody in prison for life, especially if I'm the one that's paying the tax money to allow this person to survive, to sleep in a bed and get food 3 meals a day. I think that's immoral. But is it immoral for capital punishment? I would say no. But in some situations, you could enact capital punishment, and it might be immoral. Maybe we didn't. Maybe we've condemned this person to, execution, and he's even innocent. That would absolutely be immoral. But it's not God who tells us what's moral. It's humans who have to use their intellect to evaluate the situation and determine what is moral. So it is subjective, and it's based on circumstances and evidence. It is not based on, God does not tell us who's guilty of crimes. God does not tell us how to punish people, whether it's life in prison or with the lethal injection or hanging. It's humans who decide this. Humans decide what is moral. And one generation of human might decide that public hangings is the adequate way because they say this is a public demonstration to anybody who wants to rob a bank, that this is what will happen to you if you try to rob a bank. So God is not answering any questions for us. He does not instill in our minds what is good and what is bad. Humans have to argue and debate and use intellect. So it is an absolute, indisputable fact that morality is determined by humans, not by God.
That's an interesting perspective, sure. I don't mind. But it's all right if I hop off?
I want you to have fun.
Oh, Hoy's just left.
You're already more than life itself. All right, my girl's going to Costa
Yeah,
Rica.
anyways, host, I'm a hop off. Glad to have a discussion with you, and I was glad to keep it respectful and
Yeah,
learn something.
and I'm surprised because in the comments I thought you just wanted to fight, but you actually had a conversation. So
Nah, absolutely not. Oh, that's just jokes. No harm intended. Anyways, have a good
yeah,
day.
you too. Mama B, it's a return customer. So I think I might not have expressed myself. I know I didn't express myself perfectly, but I believe I made the case extremely strong that in every situation, it takes humans to evaluate the situation and to determine what is justified, what is moral, and what is not. When you have an aggressor that creates a situation that requires an aggressive response or maybe even the unaliving of somebody, humans in a court system or get together, evaluate the evidence, and decide what was appropriate and what was not. When people claim that God is the source of morality, it makes no sense. So you've only got like two options, maybe three options. If God would speak from the clouds and say, this guy acted immorally when he did whatever thing. Well, if God would speak from the clouds, then we could say, sure, God is the source of morality because he speaks from the clouds and he tells us audibly, we can hear it with our ears. God said that's immoral. So then I say, okay, yeah, God's the source of morality. He tells us what's good and evil. We know he doesn't do that. So the other way would be is if he doesn't do it audibly from the clouds, but if he just instills a thought into our brains and we would all come to the same conclusion and say, yes, this guy was immoral because God told me last night in a dream or just told me in my brain. And we would all get the same messages from God. We say God is the source of morality because God tells us, not audibly, but he implants thoughts into our brains and tells us what's good and evil. We know God does not do that. So the only other option where you could say God is the source of morality is if the Bible can adequately tell us what is good and evil. And it doesn't. I mean, eating pigs is good in the New Testament. Eating pigs is bad in the Old Testament. So the Bible is definitely not a reliable source for what is good and what is evil. The Bible justifies slavery in both the Old Testament and New Testament, but yet we believe that slavery and owning humans as property is immoral. So the Bible is not a reliable source of establishing morality. So this argument that God is the source of morality has no justification whatsoever. What's up, Mama B?
Yes, good morning, Jeff. I just had a question, want to get your insight on this. Is there a belief in the atheist community that the world would be a better place if people did not believe in God? And the reason I'm asking, because the way we've been socialized with religion and fear, and of course is used as a social control, do you think that the process that people are going through now as far as deconstruction is part of that evolutionary process so that we will continue to exist, opposed to ripping from people's consciousness that there is no God and they're fearful? And because what we're dealing with is the essence of power. So we eliminate God, and then some power, whatever that may be defined as, creates echo chambers, still conditions people, still indoctrinates people. So I'm saying all of that to say, are we assuming that the world would be a better place if people didn't believe in God? So just want to get your insight on that.
Well, I saw a comment go by that agrees with me. So I personally believe the world would be a better place without the belief in God. Somebody in the comments, I believe I saw 2 comments affirming that they believe that the world would be a better place without the belief in God. Now, but let me boil it down into an argument. So what keeps us, in fact, most of us drive a car, and the reason we don't drive 110 miles an hour when the speed limit is 70 or 30 is, for one, we don't want to, unalive ourselves. If you're in a 30 mile an hour zone, that means you're in a residential neighborhood, probably a bunch of stop signs and red lights. And so it's not reasonable. But on the interstate, we could drive 110 miles an hour if our car will do that. The reason we don't is mostly because we don't want to get a speeding ticket. We don't want to get caught by the cops. So the cops are what is regulating our speed on the interstate. We don't want to get a ticket. And so it's not God that is keeping us from driving 110 miles an hour. It's the police. And so I believe that there is a fear in the religious community that if we lose this concept of God overseeing us and holding us accountable to our actions, that there will be absolute chaos in the world, that people will just do the most horrible things when they realize that God's not going to hold them accountable. But yet, it's humans that hold people accountable that actually regulates bad behavior. The reason that, people don't go out and just, kidnap girls at will is because humans will hold them accountable. It's not because God will hold them accountable.
I understand that. Here's my question, though. For people that have no resources, I think that there's an assumption power is neutral, people are rational, da 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 da. But in a world where resources are very top heavy, there's a few that have, and a lot of people that don't have anything. The mobilization of people who just are trying to survive, don't have food, don't have, we still deal with starvation. My concern is that there would still be some sense of power somewhere, some aggregated power somewhere that I think, I'm just this hypothesis here, that would still be able to control people, whether it's now through just wanting to survive, or is that too big of a jump to think that?
So I don't know if I understand your question, but I definitely had a thought. And I tried to start writing a book about how the future needs to change. And the number one thing that we need to change to make the world a better place is to eliminate power struggles. So there should not be any human or any God that has power over the masses. The masses ought to be able to hold each other accountable. And if anybody ever does anything that is as an individualistic, selfish, unjust benefit for themselves, then humanity should be able to hold that person accountable. So even if we had leaders of countries, and even if we still had presidents, the president should not be the one that feels like he individually has power. He is a representative of the people that he represents. And whenever he is not representing the people should be able to remove him from office. Say, through simple, signing pledges or picketing or organizing or, something through peaceful means. So
But we're assuming, like in other countries where there's been more secularism, history, and there hasn't been this tight grip of religious, religious right, for lack of a better word. I'm just wondering, with a state like ours, a country like ours that has been predisposed with so much fear, what that looks like, because I'm amazed, Jeff. I was one of those people that were easily indoctrinated. It amazes me. There are some people that never fall for the okie doke, right? So it's like, what's the difference between our brain and their brain? Like all the struggle and stuff that we had to go through with the deconstruction process, and how it's a very slow process so that you are sane in the end. So I'm wondering if this deconstruction process that we're having is a natural process of evolution, of us letting go of this because we simply can't hold on to the okie doke anymore. And maybe it happening like that will end up with a more favorable outcome than just jarring, snatching people's God away, and they have no other sensibilities to deal with it.
Well, I don't understand. So my God was essentially snatched from me. So I understand because it was only 2 or 3 years ago that that I believed in a God with all my heart. I believed that there was a God 2 or 3 years ago. I went through a few weeks at least. I mean, I'm still dealing with it because in the past few weeks from right now, just the past few weeks, I've been, I guess, depressed. I felt hopeless because I've been arguing that the Bible is not true and proving it over and over to people, and it's like they don't care whether it's true or not. They believe in it no matter what. So I get depressed and saying, "Oh my goodness, it's hopeless. These people are going to be dumb forever." And why don't I just live to make myself happy and forget about all these ignorant people that want to believe in superstitions? But when I went through the process of losing my God or losing faith in my God, it was hard. But it did not make me want to be an evil person. It did not make me want to go out and do evil things. It just made me understand that this life is what matters. And instead of focusing my energy on an imaginary world with an imaginary God and an imaginary place after I die, it focused my energy on the here and now and on the life that we're living now. And I believe that the world would be a better place if humanity would say, there is no God that's going to save us or solve all our problems or take us to a utopia after we die, that we need to focus our energy on making this world a better place. Then absolutely, if humans would unite it towards making this world a better place and this life a better life for all humans, then we could exponentially make this world a better place. When we would focus our energy on this life and this world instead of the next life and the next world. So I don't believe taking people's God is bad at all. I think it's good because it directs their focus. Now, if there is anybody that is only being a good person because they're afraid of hell after they die, and when they lose that fear of hell, they just actively go out and start kidnapping and raping, and then that person is going to be eventually caught and arrested and condemned and maybe even executed. So if there is a group of people that want to be evil when they realize that God's not going to judge them, then humans are going to judge them right now. And it should be public. And this will help convince people that being held accountable to humans is actually real instead of being held accountable to an imaginary character after you die.
Do you think though, because most people that go through deconstruction, it's a very slow process. So do you think that the slow process is necessary for that not to happen, like what you're saying about all of a sudden people that are not doing things because they believe in hell? If you take that from them, then they'll do horrible things. Do you think the slow process is what keeps a person sane with deconstruction? Because I haven't met very many people who have gone through deconstruction that it's not a slow process for whatever reason.
Well, I don't know what you call slow, because I feel like for me it was pretty fast. I feel like it was almost flipping a switch for me.
But it took you years to get to that point for the switch to to flip
Yeah.
is what I mean by that.
So
That
I had
part.
lots of questions all throughout my believing days, but I still believe. But I had all these questions and conflicts. But at some point, I just flipped a switch and said, "Oh my goodness, this whole thing is garbage and not true or not reliable." And then I feel like now I'm one of the best atheistic arguers that I've ever heard. Now Sam, what's his name? I think it's something with Sam.
Sam Harris.
Yeah, Sam Harris. I mean, that dude is awesome. That guy's
Oh,
smart.
he is. He's tough. He's tough.
Matthew, what's his name? Dillahunty, Matt Dillahunty.
Yeah.
He's pretty good, but I don't like a lot of the arguments that Matt Dillahunty makes. So I feel like I've got better arguments than Matt Dillahunty in some cases, in several cases. But Sam Harris is phenomenal. I've never thought Sam Harris made a bad argument. That dude is smart.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate your insight, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I answered your questions, but I think.
Well, I think you've given me. There's another side of it to be considered. I believe that as we go through this evolutionary process, that the deconstruction is a part of that. And keep going. I know it can be depressing to feel like these people just want to believe in this, but it's like you say, when people get to that questioning stage, it's these platforms that help you get over. Those that don't want to believe are just not going to believe, but those that are questioning need these type of spaces to process the questions that nobody else is willing to answer in the camps that they're in. So stay encouraged.
Appreciate that, Mama B.
All right.
My thing was it was almost instantaneous because I like you, I had questions along the way, but I still, believed it. I thought, oh, they just embellished a little bit here and there. But it was when I actually, well, that whole story when someone was a new Christian was trying to act like they knew more about it than I did. That was when I started reading Genesis, and I did that secular Bible study. And crazy enough, the person who does the secular Bible study, his YouTube page is Mindshift, and it's for that very reason, because probably like the second or third study video, I was like, and reading Genesis, I'm like, this is all bullshit. Like my mind literally shifted away from that belief. And it doesn't shift back. Like people think, oh, you just need to believe again. Well, that's just not how it works. So it was more instantaneous for me than it was for you and Patrina, where yours was kind of like a years-long process.
Well, but there was a light switch moment for me. Now, it was a process of questioning before the light switch moment. And it's been a process of, thinking about arguments after the light switch moment. But I almost had a light switch moment when I was talking about the virgin birth, and I was saying, well, it had to happen because the Bible says it happened. But when I realized that the Old Testament contradicts the New Testament, I'm like, whoa, hey, something's wrong here. And when I realized that I was believing in something with no evidence just because I read it in a book, I'm like, hang on, when I read Matthew chapter 4 and it says Jesus went about all the region healing everybody of all their diseases and sicknesses, and he was so famous that people heard about him and brought all their sick people to him, and he healed them all. And I'm like, nobody wrote about this guy? Like, this guy would have been more popular than Caesar.
Mm-hmm.
More popular than Caesar. If there was a man that was healing all the sick from all over a region, even in the region of Israel, he would have been the most popular person. And there would have been people traveling from India to Israel and China and Rome and Africa and saying, I want to see this story where people are saying, and I want to see if it's true or not, because they've heard these stories a million times. But these stories were coming across as absolute fact. and not just a story. So they would bring their sick people from India and China and Africa and everywhere. And then they would have been writing about this person all over the world. Say, yes, there was a miracle man that existed. It doesn't. So when I realized that this man only exists in a story that we have that's in the Bible and the gospel accounts that were not even written by eyewitnesses, to me, it's cards down, game over. This is a story. It is not a true historical event. It is a story with a mythical, fictional character that was written for a purpose. And then I went and studied to find out the motive and the purpose for creating this story. And I found the motive. The motive for creating this fictional character was to change Judaism in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire was fighting with the Jews, and the Jews had a religious system that they believed in. And so when the Romans conquered the Jews, they created the fictional character of Jesus to change Judaism so that they would no longer expect a Messiah to overthrow Rome, but that they would have the option to either believe that Jesus was their Messiah or die. And Jesus didn't accomplish anything except die on a cross and promise you that you get to go to heaven when you die if you're a good, obedient Christian. And so it is clear. The motive is very clear. They wanted to change Judaism, and they wanted you to be submissive and humble, obedient to the Roman Empire, and then you get all your rewards after you die. It's clear. What's up, Serve? You're muted.
I've never actually heard you get into the story, your whole story. That's kind of interesting. You got me thinking over here.
Well, I don't know exactly.
The Jesus being immortalized, and apparently people are going to probably believe in Jesus forever into the future.
No.
Well, okay. Come on, just at least another 5,000 years, 10,000 years. Give it that.
Maybe 100 years.
But I'm not even going to say at least it's going to be forever. But
I can't hear you.
I'm saying that's your take on it. It was Roman propaganda. But if Jesus did do many miracles and rose from the dead, then his fame would have spread in the same way through the first century Palestine. You know, his followers would have been very excited about it and told everybody. So the evidence supports my position. There's the classical position that Jesus was divine, basically, sent here from God. So the evidence is the same for me too.
That's not the case. So if Jesus resurrected from the dead, then he would have had to have presented himself to the Roman Empire, who were the ones to Pilate. And what would have happened if Jesus resurrected from the dead is Pontius Pilate would have been crucified, and that Jesus would have immediately been recognized as a divine being, not 50 to 100 years later, being written in stories by people that were not even there. So the Roman Empire, if Jesus resurrected from the dead, the Roman Empire would have had to immediately acknowledge that they have been standing in the presence of a God who overcame death. So it makes no sense. The Christian narrative makes no sense whatsoever to say that Jesus actually resurrected from the dead, but nobody knew about it for 100 years. And that the Romans rejected it, that the Jews rejected it. And so when everybody is rejecting this idea that Jesus was the Jewish Messiah who resurrected from the dead, that's evidence that it didn't happen. If it did happen, then people would have instantly started telling that this guy defeated death. Everybody, it would be universal consensus that we have stood in the presence of a God who defeated death. It didn't happen. So the way Christianity spread was 100 or 200 or 300 years after the event. The Roman Empire demands that everybody accept Christianity, that you believe it under threat of violence. This is how Christianity spread. It did not spread because there was actually a man who resurrected from the dead. It makes no sense.
You would have to demonstrate that the Romans would immediately admit to wrongdoing, and many of them did believe. Like Pontius's wife or whatever, she say she was troubled in a dream about Jesus and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like they all, and eventually they all did start believing in Jesus, and the proof's in the pudding.
But
It's like
listen, eventually, so if they eventually believed in, not because they saw Jesus, but because they heard a story that other people told them. So what is if I tell you that I can fly like Superman, wouldn't you want to see it before you believed it? If you're just believing that I can fly like Superman because I told you, then
what
you're
are
being a
you?
gullible
What is
person.
you're changing the subject though, aren't you?
No, I'm saying when someone makes a claim of a supernatural thing, you have to see the supernatural thing to believe it. You
Not
don't just
really,
believe the
because
story
hold
that
on, I
somebody
believe
tells.
because of the fame, it just doesn't make sense that it would have spread through Palestine that quickly,
It didn't spread through
and
Palestine.
that predominantly, and it not be legit. I don't
It
have to
did
see the
not
miracle.
spread. You understand that the Romans destroyed Palestine? The Romans controlled Palestine? That Christianity was not even the religion in the Roman Empire until the 4th century?
But still, even though it took a couple hundred years, it still eventually was so popular that even the emperor
It
converted.
wasn't popular. It was spread by the sword.
It was
Not at
demanded.
first. Not at first.
Yes,
It wasn't.
yes, it was.
Christianity
What?
was so
No,
listen.
because they didn't have the state backing them up. Then they didn't have there was no army to do it. They had no army until
There is no so prior to the 4th century, there's no evidence that Christianity was a big, large movement at all.
Exactly.
when did they invent this Jesus story? When did the what like 70 AD exactly, or before that, or
No,
what?
shortly after 70 AD is when they invented the story. Shortly after 70 AD.
After the Roman-Jewish War.
And
Yeah.
you think the Jews are not dumb people? They're not going to just believe something because the Romans are telling them. They're going to be
The
like,
Jews rejected
no.
Christianity.
And you're going to get just a few of them oh, the Messiah already came, guys. And you're not going to get that
No
unless
Jews. You understand the
they
Christian
were
church
told by
was
other Jews that it happened.
listen, serve. The Christian church, all the church fathers were Romans. Irenaeus, Polycarp, Clement of Rome, Tertullian, they were all Romans, every single one of them. They were not Jews. The Jews rejected Christianity. The Jews have always known that this is a Roman religion.
The Pharisees assholes have rejected Jesus, but the people
Assholes.
yeah, they were assholes.
They were sticklers for the Jewish law.
They were
Yeah,
people
they
that
were.
understood the Jewish law. So you think somebody's an asshole just because they reject Jesus?
I guess, yeah, it's the wrong place to say that.
Well, I
In
mean,
a room full of atheists.
that would
but-
demonstrate your bias. So,
No,
you're
look,
saying you don't care
look.
what's true. You're just accepting Jesus
They-
and you're rejecting everybody who rejects him.
They're objectively bad and dishonest people. That Jesus was healing people, and they're like getting on to him about it, doing it on a Saturday.
There's
And
no evidence that Jesus ever healed anybody. It is a story in a book. If there was a man healing people in the 1st century, then we should have first-hand testimony to the existence of a miracle man, but we don't have that. The Bible is not even first-hand testimony of the existence of Jesus.
You don't
It's
think
all
Matthew was an
hearsay.
apostle?
No,
The writer of Matthew?
no.
Definitely
You don't
not.
think
So-
John was an apostle? The writer of John?
Mm-mm. How
so-
many Arabs do you know named John or Matthew or Mark or Luke?
Well,
It sounds different in their language, yeah, but
Well, hang on a second. So why would Matthew, if he was an eyewitness to the events, why would he have to copy from Mark? Because we all know that Matthew copied from Mark.
well, the evidence points to that.
The evidence points that Matthew copied from Mark. And so do you think that Matthew was an eyewitness to the birth of Jesus? Do you think Matthew
No,
was there?
that's a good point, actually. No.
Do you think Matthew was there when Jesus was tempted in the wilderness by the devil after he had gone into the wilderness by himself for 40 days, eating nothing for 40 days? Was Matthew an eyewitness to that? Was Matthew an eyewitness to Jesus going down to Egypt? Did Matthew travel with Jesus to Egypt? No, not a single story in the entire book of Matthew is written from the first person narrative. There is not a single story in Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John that is written from the first person perspective. They are all third person. They're saying they went here, they did that.
That might have been a literary. That might have been their culture, to not.
Except Paul did write in the first person. So Paul talked about things that he did. So Paul did attribute letters to himself, which I don't think it's legitimate either.
But okay. I was going to say Luke, but that's not going to work either. That's not actually relevant.
So Luke even admits in the first 3 verses of Luke that he was not an eyewitness, but he is writing things that many people have written before him. So he's just retelling stories that are full of contradictions and conflicts. So this is what the Bible claims. The Bible is saying that it is a third-person narrative about things that they did not see. Matthew did not see the birth of Jesus. Matthew did not travel to Egypt with him. Matthew did not go in the wilderness when he was tempted. Matthew was not inside the praetorium with Pontius Pilate so that he knew what Pontius Pilate and his wife had a dream about. Do you think Matthew heard Pontius Pilate's wife tell him that I had a dream about this guy?
I had a dream.
No, it is stories. At the very least, these stories that we have about Jesus in the Gospels are only stories. They cannot be eyewitness testimony. Even if there was some Roman soldier that was inside the praetorium when Pontius Pilate was privately pulled aside by his wife. And so Pontius Pilate would have had to made an announcement. Hey guys, my wife came to me in private and told me that she had a dream last night about this guy. and then old Matthew's over here, let me write that down. Pontius Pilate's wife had a dream. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
It is a story.
I know what you're saying, but there could be it could be something like that, though.
But you're laughing
rumor
because
that
you
spread.
know how ridiculous it sounds. Like it's that's why you're laughing, because you get it. You get the fact that this is ridiculous.
It's just stories, and we can see where the stories came from. They're copying stories from other. The reason they said Jesus was, had to flee to Egypt to run away from Herod, who was unaliving babies, is because the Jesus birth story is based on the Moses birth story. Jesus is just the new Moses. He's a literary character with a literary history. The reason we don't know anything about what happened in the life of Jesus, except for when he was 12 years old and when he was 30, is because that's the only narrative that they need. Jews had a typical, bar mitzvah or whatever, where when they're 12 years old, they demonstrate that they're truly a man and that they've studied the scriptures enough to be respected as a man. So this is why they wrote a story about Jesus when he was 12 years old, staying behind and teaching the people in the synagogue. That's his bar mitzvah. And the reason they said he went to Egypt to flee from Herod is because Moses went to Egypt fleeing from Pharaoh. It is just a literary.
No, you got that backwards. He fled Egypt to get away from Pharaoh.
No, when Moses was born in Egypt, at a time when Pharaoh was unaliving Jewish babies. And so Moses' mother put him in a basket, floated him down the river, and then he was found by Pharaoh's daughter and raised in Pharaoh's household. So he was raised as a king, a prince.
How is he fleeing Egypt, though?
No, Jesus went to Egypt, but because
how was Moses fleeing Egypt?
That's you're conflating two different stories. So
all right, it's not even that important,
right?
That part of it. I see what you're saying, and just as you have your reasons, you'll say, well, it's Roman propaganda, and I say it's miracles, and that's how it spread. I still think all the other things you just said, I could find some plausible explanation. And it is funny to think of how did that story finally get circulated.
So
But
you
you
need
know
to
what?
understand, sir.
You know
You need
what?
to
Hold
understand.
on, hold on. Here's the thing. Maybe his wife actually became a believer shortly after that because she believed Jesus rose from the dead, and then she went around telling everybody I had the dream, and my husband's a piece of crap. Look what he did. I told him not to do it. I had a dream, and sure enough, he came back. So that explains in my mind,
So, sir.
his wife story. Because I
So
know if I had a dream and all of a sudden he came back, I'm
you
believing
want to
him.
believe. So you want to believe lies. So you'll make excuses to believe the lies.
I
That's
think
what
that's
you
a good excuse. I think it's a plausible excuse that she
because you
converted
want.
very shortly
So,
afterwards.
sir, the way we can know that you're wrong is that Jesus said, "Whoever believes in Him can heal the sick." If you believe in Jesus but can't heal the sick, then that's proof that the Bible is not reliable. So when you want to believe in supernatural claims that has no evidence and make excuses to believe in supernatural things just because you read it in a book, you might as well believe in Spider-Man and Superman and Wolverine and all the X-Men and all the DC comics. You just because you read it in a book. What you need is the way you determine what is true and real is you test claims against reality. And when you believe in supernatural claims that do not match up with reality, that is evidence that you are living a delusional life.
But it does match up with reality. Jesus' name has been immortalized.
It does not match up with reality because you cannot demonstrate the existence of God. He does not answer your prayers. You can't heal the sick. Jesus said he was going to return before his apostles died. He didn't. Jesus said he was going to protect his apostles from all harm. He didn't. He said he was going to send the Holy Spirit to guide the believers into all truth. He didn't. The believers have never agreed about doctrine. So there has never been a moment in Christian history where there was supernatural guidance to unity and truth. Never. Christianity has always been splintered.
It's never
Even in
been
the second
perfect.
century.
His church has never been perfect, but they've always faithfully delivered the message that he was a miracle working, healing guy that resurrected. So, and and people will believe in him forever into the future.
No, they won't. No, they won't.
The thing is that if in those times, if Jesus was real and was doing all these miracles, and hundreds of people saw it, why didn't any of them write about it?
So you mean in the first century, like in the 40s?
Yeah, actual eyewitnesses. Yeah.
Well, I think it's why didn't they write down stories about Jesus' healing? That was your question, just to clarify?
Why didn't any of the eyewitnesses write anything?
Well, I think they wrote notes, and I think they did write things. We have the Gospels, and a lot of those Gospels they say are gone, like the Gospel of Andrew.
The Gospels are not written by eyewitnesses. This is known even in scholarship. They know that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John was not written by eyewitnesses.
They probably wrote a bunch of stuff down, but they didn't understand that it would decay over time and get lost, and they just didn't preserve it good enough and didn't realize how precious that information would be to us.
Sir, if you
believe... like this. All right, it's like, can I say one thing real quick? It's like the story of 9/11. Like, why would anyone write that story down? We all know it. It's like that famous. Like, it's like... No,
that's not a good analogy.
I'm going to record this in case they don't believe it in the future wasn't occurring to them.
We have video of 9/11. We have people alive. I was a personal eyewitness on the news.
I know. Look,
9/11.
But just an event.
So you're comparing Jesus. So we don't have a single eyewitness testimony of Jesus at all. And you want to bring up 9/11, which there are people alive today that can testify, and we can even go to. We can look at pictures. In fact, you can watch Friends.
I agree.
One of the most famous episodes or series that has ever been on TV. They had a picture on the intro to Friends that showed the Twin Towers in New York. Every episode we all saw.
Okay, man. All right,
but they're not there today.
I'm just giving an example of why they wouldn't write it down. Everybody knows about it. There's no point in writing it down.
Then why did they write down 9/11? It's documented. Sir, what you're saying makes no sense. We documented 9/11. It's on video. We've written stories about it. There's plaques, there's pictures, there's images. We documented 9/11 extensively. It is an absolute fact with overwhelming evidence. There's not a single document for Jesus.
All right, but even if we didn't have any videos or any writing, we would still know it happened. We could still go to Manhattan and see the towers are gone.
No.
You could still, you would still know about it because it was only 25 years ago that it happened.
So if someone says that
people just talking about it,
that Israel, that Jerusalem had a 100-story skyscraper in the 1st century. Nobody documented this 100-story skyscraper in the 1st century, but yet we believe it's there because we believe it was there because there's no skyscraper there today. You have to document that the skyscraper existed before we can demonstrate that it doesn't exist or that it was torn down or blown up. You can't demonstrate that Jesus ever existed. Just because the tomb is empty, you can't demonstrate that there was ever a body in it. In fact, they don't even know which tomb. There's a Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and then there's a garden tomb, and I think these are two completely different tombs, and they're taking tourists to both places and saying this is where Jesus was. Two different places.
Will you comment on the Shroud of Turin? I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts on that one.
It was not known to history until the 14th century. And before the 14th century was closed out, Pope Clement VII, I think, announced that it was a forgery, that they found the guy that did it, that he admitted to doing it, and that it was a forgery, and it's been known to be a forgery since the time it was found.
How did they do it, though? It's my understanding that science doesn't know how they did it.
So
forensic science does know.
So even if we don't know exactly how they did it, the fact that it doesn't appear to the 14th century and we have an admission from the Pope that it was a forgery, we don't have to know how they did it. Just because we can't figure out how somebody did something 600 years ago, we don't know how they did something 600 years ago. But we've had people, there's YouTube videos, and I've seen them, and Patrina even has a video on her TikTok. I think I might have one on mine, where there have been people that have demonstrated that you can duplicate this process with all you can do is take some powdered dye and rub it on. You can use like a plaster face mold, put it flat on the table, stretch the linen over the top, dust this mold or linen that's laying over a plaster mold of a face, dust it, then cook it in an oven, and then you get essentially the exact same thing.
What would be the motive? It's like a weird looking
money.
Right, for money and to make people believe that Christianity is true. That's a clear motive, to get people to believe that Christianity is true, because Christianity is a manipulative religion for the sole purpose of controlling the minds of people and to take their mony. Why does God?
If it is a scam, that is like the most offensive scam I've ever heard of.
It is. Christianity is, in fact, the existence of Islam owes its existence to Christianity, because they learned the manipulative tools that Christianity used to control and manipulate people, and they applied those same manipulative tools to write a holy book and to create an Arab religion to control and manipulate their people, the same way that the Roman Empire controlled and manipulated their people. All you got to do is write a book and demand that you believe it under threat of violence, and then you can control the minds of all these people and get them to send you money.
Yeah, you're right about that. I'm gonna go ahead and drop down and see if anybody else wants to come up. But
all right, I got a few in the box requesting. Thanks for stopping in, Serve.
Thank you.
Are you letting them in, Kim?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention.
I don't care. I can, but I didn't want to duplicate.
I got him.
What's up, Winter? Are you there?
Winner, chicken dinner.